requested that the Electoral Court furnish it with reasons for the dismissal of its decision to bar Zuma from standing, given that his counsel had based its appeal on a number of arguments. In other news, Western Cape authorities have closed camping facilities in the wilderness section of the Garden Route National Park. This follows yesterday's heavy rains in the Southern Cape. The initial report indicates that there were over 200 millilitres of rain over a 6-hour period, combined with the spring high tide. The rain has since subsided and the water is flowing strongly from the Toh River mouth directly into the sea. SAMPOC spokesperson JP Lowe.
The ebb and flow rest camp is currently closed and mop-up operations are underway. All the hiking trails, including the trails at Ebb and Flow, Swartvlei, Woodville Big Tree, Fali and Grootveld Otanikwa hiking trail and circles in the forest are closed until further notice. The park is currently experiencing power cuts and our technical team together with the municipality are working on resolving this.
And lastly, looking further afield, Arizona's Supreme Court has ruled that the U.S. state can enforce a near-total ban on abortion. The ruling revives the law dating back more than a century that makes abortion punishable by 2 to 5 years in prison, except when the mother's life is at risk. The BBC's Carl Nasman reports.
The law is one of the strictest abortion bans in the U.S. and also one of the oldest, dating back 160 years to the Civil War, when Arizona wasn't a state and women didn't have the right to vote. President Biden called it cruel. In a sign of the political potency of the issue, many Arizona Republicans have also come out against the decision. Voters, though, could have the final say. A state measure to protect abortion is likely to be on the ballot in November in this battleground state that could also help decide the presidential election.
Recapping the top story for this hour, one person has been injured in a shooting incident at a shopping centre on Kensington Drive in Durban North. It's believed to be linked to a robbery. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour for SFM News. I'm Eva Chipa.
And coming up in your sports this hour, World Athletics to pay prize money at Olympics. Sharks expecting a tough Edinburgh side this weekend. And Sunshine Tour stars all set for tee-off tomorrow. More details at 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
2 years since winning the EFC middleweight title in the most dramatic and controversial fashion, Luke Michael finally defends his belt for the very first time at EFC 112 against the imposing submission machine J.P. Kruger. And in the co-main event, featherweight champion Iga Smiley Cabeza becomes the next athlete aiming for champ status as he battles the imposing Kaleka Block Kabanda. EFC 112 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
South Africa is facing an increase in people diagnosed with non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, cancers, hypertension, lung problems and obesity. This also increases the number of people living with these diseases and mental health.
Many people living with these preventable diseases may not be immediately aware unless they go for health screening and testing.
It is our responsibility to invest in our healthier future through regular physical activity, healthy diets and avoiding risky health behaviors such as alcohol and tobacco use.
The Department of Health urges people to go for regular health screening for early detection and effective treatment if they are diagnosed with any of these conditions.
This message is brought to you by the National Department of Health.
The boys of Steve Barker resist to leave the pitch without a ticket to the semis. But there's a big problem. Kevin Hunt's boys say the last dance of happiness belongs to them. This is the Nedbank Cup quarterfinal battle. Stellies versus Matsatsanza Pitori on Saturday, 13 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
No.
No. I've heard on the radio stations. They're not filling vacancies. There is no money.
No, but that's my question to you. If they don't have the money, will a doctor work for Mahala?
Give me a chance. I'm going to give you a reason.
No. I'm asking you. I need to challenge your position.
No. Nobody works for free.
Right now, the National Pulse is boiling over.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
What's your pulse rate right now about yourself and about South Africa? Every day things happen. You know that yesterday we had this situation. Now we know that former President Jacob Zuma can now stand on the MK ballot if they choose to. For example, big issues there. And yesterday, just to tell you, I was at Freedom Park, and you know that we did a live broadcast from Freedom Park about 30 years of freedom. And besides the content part, which I would suggest strongly that you need to listen to, it's a podcast, so you can listen to that as well. What came through for me was that, Freedom Park, which is this museum commemoration of people who've contributed to the struggle, and not just in South Africa, but from around the African continent in the main and the African diaspora. It is such a fabulous monument, right? Just at the entrance of Pretoria. But how many people go to it as tourists? I mean, I know when I travel anywhere in the world, and I'm privileged to do that, you go to Egypt, you go to Cairo, you make sure you go to the pyramids, you go to the museums. There's this National Heritage Museum of Egypt, which is just fabulous. You go to Rwanda, as I've been privileged to go to. You go to the Genocide Museum. How many people actually go to the Freedom Park Museum? And when I went there, there should be daily tourists. And the question there is really, something has to happen in terms of the marketing of Freedom Park, not just for big events, but that people every day would be going there in their droves as tourists and as South Africans, taking these tourists along to say, get a sense of my country and its history in terms of where we were and how we got to what we call freedom now. So I think that's particularly important. The other thing, and I want to just ask you this, right? The issue around, I touched on it yesterday about personal purpose, right? So here's a question to you, right? If purpose is that important in your life as the number one factor that determines where you head, you need to find your purpose. So of all the things, if someone said, I'm struggling in my career, I wouldn't say get a job. It's like, what's your purpose? Why do you exist? Whatever you define in terms of why you exist. If you put your attention to why you exist and give meaning to it, right, that's your purpose. And then your job ideally must be aligned to your purpose, not your purpose fits into your job. For example, right? So that's important. So for example, for myself, my purpose is to champion people. I try every day to try and bring out the champions in individuals, because it is champion people that will ultimately build a champion nation. So my focus is get the people, build them into champions. That's my purpose. So my question to you is what is your purpose? And I'd love to know. And drop me a line via WhatsApp. You can text me 0614 104 107. If you wish to call in and share your purpose, that's great too. Same number, so 0614 104 107. But you can also call in 086 000 2032. And here's the flip side of that. What is your purpose? And then here's the very important one. What, in your opinion, is the national purpose? What is South Africa's national purpose? What do we, if I know what is it that you exist for? What is it that you drive? What is South Africa's national purpose that is a rallying force for the people of our country to get around? Let me give you an example. In the late 80s, our national purpose was end apartheid. Very clear, very straightforward. Okay. In 1994, it was nation building and reconciliation. In around 2006, the purpose was 2010 World Cup. It came out of our ears. Everything we ever did from 2006 to 2010 was 2010 World Cup, right? Since then, what's our purpose? I'm struggling to fully understand what is our national purpose. And therefore, my question to you, what do you think is our national purpose? And what do you think our national purpose should be? And again, you can WhatsApp, text or voice note me 0614 104 107. Would love to hear your thoughts on this issue. My name's Ashraf Garda. This is the National Pulse. For every reason, for 3 hours every day, we get a sense of what the National Pulse is all about. And today, one of the big issues around the National Pulse is e-tolls. So for whom the bells toll? Well, the bells have tolled for e-tolls. We'll talk about that with the Premier of Gauteng, Manyaza Lesufi, right after this.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Well, this has been an ongoing conversation, isn't it, about e-tolls and how it has impacted the lives, certainly in the Gauteng region. Okay, understand now. Finally, e-tolls have been scrapped or will be scrapped like tonight, so I've been told. Let's find out more about the story behind the story of e-tolls with the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lusufi. Appreciate your time. First time we chatting since I'm back on SAFM, I should say Premier Lusufi.
Congratulations for the new slot. I'm truly excited. No? Thank you so much and welcome.
Much appreciated. Looking forward to having many conversations with you on air and off when the opportunity arises. Right. Okay. Let's talk about e-tolls. What's the state of play there?
Well, tomorrow at 1 second before midnight, will officially myself and the minister switch off the e-tolls and making this part of history, making this part of our roads history, and ensure that whoever that was not using or was protesting against e-tolls will start a new chapter of rebuilding our roads as not e-tolled, but as ordinary roads that can be utilized by anyone, anytime. Whatever moment they want to utilize them.
And help me understand this. When you say switch off, is it an actual switch off, like that electronically you plug a switch off, or what?
Yes, there are two parts. There is part of billing, which is the part that we're going to switch off so that no one is going to be billed. Normally you get this beep when you pass there. If you have an e-tag, that beep will come to an end. But the other part of fighting crime using the cameras and the countries for other things will continue. It's only the billing part of the e-toll that is going to be switched off.
Yeah. Give us the backstory in terms of how you got to making this decision finally.
It was very difficult, as I must be honest. Extremely difficult to an extent that at one stage I nearly felt that we need to pull out of the negotiations because our argument as Gauteng was very clear. Yes, the roads are in Gauteng, but are not used by Gauteng citizens only. And there is no way that you can punish citizens of Gauteng because at that stage we were requested to at least pay 60% of the debt. And the debt is almost 47 billion. So if you want people of Gauteng to pay that debt alone, it was going to be astronomical. It was going to be catastrophic because we have to take money from either hospitals, schools, so that we settle this particular debt. So we had to enter the negotiations to a tough, difficult, but in the ultimate end, we settled for 30%, which is around 12 billion. This is mainly because the failure to pay e-tolls was costing or cost the government almost 21 billion in interest. And we of the view that you can't pay interest when the principal amount is remaining the same. We just have to bite the bullet and take a decision on how we finalize this. And then we agreed to pay 30%. National government is paying 70%. So the principal amount will be sorted out. And whatever that we are going to do now is to ensure that we expand the roads. Because we couldn't maintain the roads, we couldn't expand the road, we couldn't borrow more money, purely because those that borrowed us money felt that their investment was under threat. Now that this chapter is over, our highways are not going to be parking based because we'll start to improve and maintain these particular roads.
And this payment that you talk about, you paying as Gauteng 30%, national government paying 70%.
Yeah.
So you're paying that debt over to who?
To those that borrowed us money to build these roads. There are people that borrowed us money to build these roads. We will pay them 100%, 70% coming from national, 30% coming from the province. We, part of the province, 30%, we have gone to the financial institutions to borrow that amount of money because we'll rather have an arrangement with financial institutions like stopping Sanral to be in a position to borrow to expand new roads because road expansion or road construction is the backbone of economic development. So in the last 3 or 4 years since the district of e-tolls, we couldn't expand our roads because this was phase 1. We're supposed to go to phase 2, phase 3, and that is why you see our roads being chock-a-block because phase 2 and phase 3 was standstill until this matter is resolved. Now that they've resolved it, it paves way for us to build new roads and expand our roads.
So how does it pave the way? I mean, just explain that the process in terms of what was the roadblock to prevent the expansion of your and the improvement of your roads.
It's 3 areas, Ashraf. The first one is maintenance. If you check R21, for example, that road was collapsing because it was going through difficulties. I'm told it's dolomatic, so you needed a lot of money to stop it being dolomatic. But you could not do that because when a road is e-tolled or it's tolled, you must use money you collect to repay it. But money that you collect was not coming. Basically, means that road could not be fixed, and that is why the roads were slow. We could not. Now that we've removed the tolling part of it, it simply means that we can get additional money to go and fund that road. So you can't fund from ordinary roads funds to fund a toll road. You can't do that. That is why you have to e-gazette or re-gazette the elimination of toll roads before we can do this. And so it will pave the way for that. Secondly, it will then allow us, as I said, this was part one or phase one. There is phase two. But we couldn't go to phase two until phase one is sorted out. Now that we've sorted out phase one, we have to plan phase two. Phase two, Gauteng has developed. There are new areas, there are new roads. Rustenburg is coming towards Gauteng. You look at Sasolburg is coming towards Gauteng. Harrismith or Balfour is coming towards Gauteng. Part of Polokwane is coming towards Gauteng. So we needed to expand our roads to accommodate this expansion and new development. But we also have to create new cities. We can't rely on the new cities. You can't build new cities. You can't build new cities, new roads, if you have not sorted this particular problem.
So,
and the third area.
Yeah, sorry, you wanted to say third area? Carry on very quickly.
Obviously, the third area is the partnership that we need to formulate with our counterpart in our provinces. They also want to build new things where we're not in a position to engage in discussions with them because we're waiting for this matter to be resolved.
Okay. Now, let me get this right. In terms of those that paid e-tolls, and I can tell you now, Premier, I didn't pay a single cent, okay, from day one. Those that have paid, I don't know what percentage, what happens to the money that they've paid?
What we've done to say people didn't support e-tolls on the basis of lack of consultation. They argued very seriously that there was no consulting. They were not consulted. We don't want, if we resolve that matter of those that paid and those that have not paid, we also take a decision without consulting the road users or people that are affected. So today, myself and the minister, we established a task team that will start the process of consultation. How do we resolve that matter? There are those that paid, there are those that didn't pay. In order to have a resolution on this matter, we have to start the consultation process. It's out of that consultation process that will communicate the final decision.
Okay. There's a voice note from one of our listeners. I think it's Freddie. Yeah. Let's get his voice note. I think it may be very relevant to the conversation. Freddie, let's go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf. Good afternoon, Date Panyaza. Date Panyaza, you are saying a lot of different things. You are switching off e-tolls tomorrow. On the other hand, the Minister of Transport was saying we should continue to pay those who are already owing the e-tolls. We should continue to pay. And you are saying we should not be punishing the residents of Gauteng. As a resident of Gauteng, I'm owing 16,000 rand. Why should I pay that?
Okay. Maybe that relates to my point. I think you sort of semi-answered that. You want to go ahead again?
Yeah, let me answer that. The minister said those that need to pay, it's until midnight. Because there are people that utilizes e-tax and other things. So it is going to use to charge them until midnight. From tomorrow, they're not going to pay. So that's what the minister said. In terms of the debt, we've agreed that we are setting up a task team that will start the process of consultation. Let me explain to it so that you can understand why we need to consult. There are people that were using car hire services, for example. The car hire services charge e-tolls. So if we have to say people must be paid back, the car hires must be consulted whether they have to do that. But secondly, the payment of e-tolls at a SARS or a tax incentive. There are tax people that have paid tax. So you need to consult with SARS. What is the consequences of that? But thirdly, which is very, very important where we are, and the need for us to deal with this, there are people that didn't pay at all. And there are people that have long bills. So do we scrap it? And if we scrap it, because these are public funds, which process or legal process will allow us and protect us into that process? If we have to go back to them and say, well, they must pay it back, how do you consult them and how do they need to pay it back? So you need to go and establish that task team to clear all those particulars from tax and many other things before we can just make that one statement.
Well, let's hope it gets done. Let's hope it gets done very quickly because I think it's that important. Let me just go to a sideways on this issue just for the moment.
Yeah.
In terms of, if my understanding, I think you sort of have been speaking about, this is a victory, right? Many may suggest, in fact, this is it is a defeat, right? In terms of a good example of Gauteng, whether it's Gauteng with regard to SANRAL or national government getting things wrong, and the public mobilizing against what they see is the wrong. So the victory is really for the public as opposed to government.
Well, if the government didn't listen, and if government was stubborn, it was not a democratic government, you need to appreciate that at least there's a listening government. I was on the other side before I became premier. I know I led a march of the ANC to go to then President Zuma to demand that this must be scrapped. The ANC was very instrumental. Our alliance, COSATU, and other things were very instrumental. But when we came to government, some of us, we knew where we stand on this particular matter. That is why we've driven this agenda. So it's not a victory for one person, it's a victory for all those that were involved. If you say it's a victory for communities, indeed. If it's a victory for NGOs or formation, indeed. It's a victory for other political parties. But it's a victory for all of us that believed that this particular method needs to be relooked. And I'm glad at the helm of this government that I led that voice and I made firm commitment. Even many people didn't believe it when I was delivering the State of the Province address that come March. This will be history.
Well, I'm glad you did what you did. I mean, and that's really what a premier should do, right? Having said that, however, I noticed in some of the social media conversations about 2 weeks ago when this issue just surfaced, again, victories being claimed, whether it's Gauteng Province, whether it's others, and many others, coming back and say, but acknowledge the role of OUTA in this, in terms of being effectively the first respondent or form of activism against e-tolls. What would you tell us about that?
That is why that everyone that was involved, from OUTA, church formation, bikers, political parties, everyone that was involved must be acknowledged. And we should be grateful that we stood together on this particular matter.
Finally, Premier, what's the big lesson to learn from this? I mean, I think there are so many, there's always leadership lessons to learn. What's the big lesson for you to learn from this?
Let me say there is something that, regardless of this, that we must not throw it out of the window. The user pay principle. If you use something, you must pay for it. So one lesson that we need to really learn out of this is that that user pay principle must not only be defended but must be communicated appropriately. Because we really believe that the communication was not clear and what we are expecting out of people of Gauteng was also not clear. And that if you introduce something of this nature, you don't have to introduce it in one region only. If you have to introduce it, put up a plan. But we are starting with Gauteng, we'll go to Free State, we'll go to Cape Town. Because if you target one area, people feel that they're isolated when they're paying taxes and paying all that.
Absolutely. But therefore, and therefore, here's the last thing. Isn't the lesson, where it's an example of government being disconnected from its constituency, in this case here?
Indeed. As I said, to me, it's a collective decision-making, but most importantly, outlining the roadmap so that everyone knows it starts here, it ends here. But if you don't communicate that clearly, it creates the confusion that it has created for all of us. But as I said, come tomorrow, this part of our lives is going to be history.
Well, there you are. That's where we can leave it. Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi. So there we are. Tomorrow night, midnight, e-tolls, finish and clown.
Join model and TV personality Dr. Fezile and Dr. Anesu on Top Travel. Allow yourself to be taken on an exhilarating journey across Africa, redefining travel at its finest on our very own home turf. From the rolling green hills of the Eastern Cape to the breathtaking sapphire waters of the Kenyan coastline, the duo explores the diverse landscapes and cultures of the continent we call home. Channel your inner adventurer with Top Travel. Start Saturday the 23rd of March at 8:30 p.m. only on.
And we would buy 500 cars and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
TV licensors have developed a new GIS-linked national address database to ensure that we can communicate with all our valued license holders. We now have a visual of all licensed and unlicensed households nationwide in order to effectively communicate with you. We remind you to take note of our payment reminders and avoid paying penalties due to non-compliance or choosing to ignore your legal obligation to pay your license fees. We can communicate with all our license holders through cost-effective electronic methods, enabling us to collect license fees and continue to support the national broadcaster, the SABC, in accordance with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act No. 4 of 1999 as amended. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
X at SFM Radio and at Ashraf Garda.
Keep those WhatsApps going about national purpose and about the e-tolling story we've just discussed. Let's talk about Sudan now. It's been a year now since that region, Sudan, as opposed to southern Sudan, Sudan itself, racked into war once again. And the big fallout is always the humanitarian fallout, the humanitarian displacement, as we've seen what's happening in Gaza, in Palestine, right? So let's find out more about that with Ibrahim Dean, who's a researcher and independent political analyst. Ibrahim, I appreciate your time. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Right. Give us a scenario here. First of all, who's been fighting it and what has been the impact on the people of the Sudan?
So it started off last April as a clash between two generals, the army and the rapid support forces, both combined to overthrow the regime in 2019. Also, ironically, in April as well. And ever since then, it's actually been mutated. It's mutated to a situation where, tens of thousands have been killed. There's 11 million displaced, 5 million in need of urgent food aid. The amounts, last year the amount of people needing aid was 10 million. This year it's 18 million. And the conflict has now mutated and ethnified into a situation where, especially in Darfur, we're seeing acts of, definitely ethnic cleansing, war crimes, possible genocide, especially at the hands of Hamiti, who, was responsible between 2003 and 2005 of the acts that killed around hundreds of thousands in the same region, mainly being fueled by, outside help. Your Egyptians and backing the Sudanese armed forces, your Emiratis backing and Libyans backing the rapid support forces, and basically the situation in Sudan, which as I said 5 years ago, saw overthrow of a regime which had been a dictatorial regime which had been in power for 30 years is now, it seems as it's far worse off those early democratic times.
What are the numbers in terms of people being displaced and impacted by this humanitarian crisis?
So there's Sudan's population is 50 million. 11 million have been displaced. Most from the regions in western Sudan, Darfur. 1.7 million displaced to neighboring countries, your South Sudan, your Chad, Ethiopia taking in quite a lot. And that's also placed a big stress on that. And, the humanitarian aspects, aside from the deaths, the displacement, there's been 75% of health facilities have been destroyed. The water infrastructure has been destroyed. There's famine setting in many areas. Sure. And, aid has been very slow. Of the 2.4 billion needed last year, only 57% was supplied in. They're looking at $4 billion needed in aid now. And, aid itself in the war zone, as we're seeing in Palestine, it has also become politicized. And so, many of the armed forces, both of the parties are accused of actually siphoning the aid and actually, only wanting to.
So here's a quick one. We got about 30 seconds. What role should South Africa play or is playing in trying to resolve this crisis?
South Africa has called for mediation and has, President Ramaphosa has met with Hamiti. But I think the bigger role needs to be one, amplification of the situation, but two, calling for punishment of outliers. People who are supporting the belligerents need to be punished. Otherwise, the conflict will endure. South Africa needs to support the Saudi initiative and the IGAD initiative. We're trying to, at least for now, come up with a power sharing agreement, then leading to a more, substantive peace in the country.
Well, thanks for bringing that to our attention, Ibrahim Dean, and you certainly have done that, amplifying the fact that 11 million people displaced in one country, in Sudan, in our continent. Goodness, man, that's just not acceptable. Let's get the news headlines now with Iba Chipa.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories for this hour. Political parties will be contesting the May 29th general elections in Limpopo, have all supported the IEC's Code of Conduct by signing a pledge to promote a free and fair election process. The Commission says the pledge is important as it reminds political parties to desist from acts of intolerance, violence, and interfering in the electoral process, among others. The High Court in Polokwane, Limpopo, satisfied that state witness in the murder of the trial of 5 men accused of killing Collins Chabane Municipal Mayor Moses Maluleke was reliable and truthful. Judge Violet Semenya was referring to the testimony given by state witness Avatakari Mulaudzi. And lastly, one person has been injured in a shooting incident at a shopping centre on Kensington Drive in Durban North. I'll be back with more on these and other stories at the top of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good afternoon. Durban's N2 southbound is a heavy queue. It has been in the off-peak part of the day this week, Monday, Tuesday, and again today being Wednesday. Just queuing up from Inanda Road down to an additional lane closure at Spaghetti Junction. The N3, Pietermaritzburg, Cato Ridge, looking fine with the Durban-bound or Pietermaritzburg-bound. No major troubles today through the works yet, so looking good at this stage. Pretoria, the N1 south from Rigel Avenue through to the roadworks at the R21. That's quite slow. The R21 south approaching Clayville is busy because of the roadworks there on the way to the airport. Joburg's highway network moving okay today. Nothing too serious to report in on at this stage. And Cape Town, a busy start ahead of the main rush hour. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard backlogging to Hospital Bend. And then the M3 from the bend down towards Rhodes Drive in the Newlands area. Very busy. The M5 slow from the N2 down towards the Cromboom Road exit. And roadworks on the N2 outbound at Newway. The left lane is closed. The right lane is open. It's a heavy backlog from just before you get to the R300 through that Newway exit on your way out of Cape Town. With your traffic updates, I'm Rob Byrne.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Kapele.
Right, Toby, what have you got in your sports bag?
Good afternoon, Ashraf and our listeners. Starting things off with Olympic news, World Athletics have announced that it will become the first international federation to award prize money at the Olympic Games. The global governing body said a total prize pot of 44.4 million rand has been made available for this year's Olympics in Paris, with gold medalists receiving around 925,000 rands. This will be extended to silver and bronze medalists at Los Angeles 2028, and there'll be 48 athletics events in Paris with relay gold medalists to share their prize money amongst this team. So obviously this is absolutely great because the IOC does not award prize money to any winners at the Olympics, and many medalists receive payments from their country's governments, national sporting bodies, or from their sponsors. In football, as we know, Banyana are not going through to the Olympics, and head coach Desiree Ellis was contracted as Banyana coach until after the Olympics. And now that the team will not be in France, it remains unclear what the future holds. What she would like, though, however, is to start building a new team ahead of the WAFCON in 2026.
The 2026 one is the doubles up as a World Cup qualifier, and you want to make sure that those players get experience of a tournament of such nature, because you play group games, then you play that quarterfinal, which is a World Cup qualifier, and that is a potential banana skin, like we almost saw in the WAFCON. So you want to make sure that players get experience. You want to make sure that, again, you get the mix right. You want to make sure that you have cover in all positions. You want to make sure of having a look, not just in the league. I don't think we've touched the whole of South Africa. I think the one area that we haven't done has been the rural areas, and I'm sure there's a couple of gems there.
Tell you what, I watched, followed the game last night, and, of course, having lost the first leg 1-0, I knew we had to at least draw to get it into extra time. I was nar, man.
It was so sad. Really? It was very sad. I think at one stage the team didn't really look as jointed as I would have loved them to. Yeah. And I think big ups to Nigeria because their defense line also looked solid at one point. So quite unfortunate for South Africa not booking their spot to the Olympics. I really would have loved them.
Yeah, because look, realistically, they could well, be lucky to get a point or two at the Olympic Games, right? But just to be part of a global event, it just elevates again the national, in this case, the national women's soccer team and that sport to the level that the AFCON did, right?
Absolutely. And that's what Desiree was saying, that them not qualifying for the Olympics is actually a failure in terms of women's football in South Africa. And just by the way, the Olympics is the only tournament that Desiree hasn't won.
Okay, well, there we are. Pity. Okay. Next.
Well, still staying with football, police have made a breakthrough in the murder of Kaizer Chiefs defender Luke Fleurs by arresting 6 suspects in Soweto. In the early hours of this morning, the 24-year-old was fatally shot in a hijacking on the 3rd of April. The 6 suspects are expected to make their first appearance in the Roodepoort Magistrates Court on Friday. Elsewhere, clubs who break the Premier League's financial rules can still expect to be given significant points deductions in the future. This is despite a proposal to replace points penalties with a fine. Now, Premier League clubs are attending their latest shareholders meeting today, where the future of the squad cost controls is the primary issue on the agenda. There'll be no vote on the issue, but the league wants a new system in place by the summer and certainly before the new season starts in August. Ending things off with rugby, Sharks star Bongi Mbonambi believes that Edinburgh will be a much stronger unit this weekend in the Challenge Cup quarterfinals than when his team faced them in the United Rugby Championship not too long ago. A week before, they recorded a 23-13 win over Edinburgh in the URC, and it means that the Sharks will be facing the Scottish side twice in 2 weeks, and Bonambi is expecting Sean Everett's side to be a different beast this coming weekend.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's a quarterfinal and a whole different another competition makes it even more difficult. We know that they're definitely going to come here even better prepped than before. I think they're going to play a better team. We noticed last time that they're missing a couple of their key players, and obviously they just came back from playing Six Nations. I think they're going to be definitely fresh and more challenging this time around, especially with a coach like Sean Everett that they have. He knows how to prepare a team to come play down here in Durban, and playing an important a game like a quarterfinal. They're definitely going to come back stronger.
On that note, that's it from my side for now. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105.9 FM in Port Elizabeth. Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
So I hope you have your fingers on the pulse, on the national pulse, and you certainly do that by listening to this show. Certainly appreciate that you're listening and watching us. You know, you can watch us via streaming live in audio form as well as visual form. You go to the SAFM website, you will connect to us, but otherwise listen to us nationwide, 104 to 107, wherever you are. And what about telling someone else to listen for the very first time? Can you encourage another person, maybe take a picture with them to say, hey, they are, we're hooked into SAFM nationwide? I would just be thrilled about that. There's quite a few people responding to, well, two things. I asked about what is your purpose and what is our national purpose. And then I asked a question about, well, comments on e-tolling, right? And I'll get to that. Let me just remind you as well. We'll chat, today's the last day of Ramadan in South Africa. And I say in South Africa because in some parts of the Northern Hemisphere, it's already the day of Eid. And yesterday, we chatted. I spoke to the Reverend, remember, from St. George's Church in Cape Town, and he made the point about the impact of Ramadan on society. So we'll chat to Dr. Qureisha Suleiman about just that. Looking forward to that conversation. As far as the comments, our national purpose is to unseat the ANC and the so-called Ramaphosa. Okay, that's another one. And another one, I think our national purpose is to find purpose itself, because currently there's nothing moving from into Tuko, Imbuzi, Sitole. Well, maybe that's the point. There's nothing that's galvanizing us as a country. So therefore, what is the national purpose? There's some voice notes too.
Good afternoon. How are you? Good afternoon to your listeners. Our purpose currently must be land redistribution. But, our government is not taking that seriously. But I really feel that this is the time that we should be talking seriously about land redistribution, taking land that is not being used and that is not being used properly to resettle people who need land and who can use it. Thank you.
Well, I think that's an interesting one. Although, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think land redistribution is a fundamental issue around the redress that we should be implementing in our country. But shouldn't the purpose be higher than that? Shouldn't the purpose be exactly maybe what you're suggesting? A sense of equal opportunity for all the people of our country to express themselves. And once we agree on that and to achieve to their maximum potential, and once we agree on that and use a catchphrase that we all buy into, then we say, what are the tools? And land redistribution would be one of them, for example. So when someone said to me the other day, well, fight corruption is our purpose, I said, no, fight corruption is a response to the current state that we're in. A national purpose must be something higher. It has to be something highly aspirational. Let's see if we've got another voice note.
Ashraf, yes, good afternoon. Flores here from the Western Cape, speaking about the national pulse. I think in our diversity, there should be unity. We are a mix of ethnical, diverse groups of people who should just have one vision in mind, and that should be unity. And currently, there's no unity in us as a nation. So the national pulse would be unity. Thank you so much. Have a good show. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks for that contribution. The national pulse, national purpose should be unity. The question is, how do we achieve that sense of unity? Let's get to some of the callers as well. We've got JCK, right? I wonder what JCK stands for. Not JFK, JCK. From Musina, hi. You're not JFK, right?
Next time, Ashraf, you'll get it right. You'll get it right next time. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you. Very good indeed. Yeah, go ahead. What do you want to talk about? Scarce skills, I understand, right?
Yeah, I would like to talk about scarce skills. We South Africans, we don't want to tell truth to the power. We tell lies to ourselves. I would like to concur with Mrs. Makoti Kosa when she talks about this scarce skill. We are telling lies that when let me call them freedom fighters, when they were in Zimbabwe, Malawi, Tanzania, Zambia, wherever, they didn't have freedom of movement. Those people were staying in the camps. That is true. Now it's like those people, when they were in Zambia or Tanzania, they were walking free. They were not walking free. If they wanted to go to location, they get a permit. They go to location and they're given time frame to come back to the camp. And if they miss the time, they were punished. What I wanted to say is, you see with this scarce skill, you'll find that at retail shops and factories, you'll find that there is managers who are coming from wherever, you understand, which is not a scarce skill. You check at KFC, Nando's, retail shops, ShopRite, you link them. You'll find that those people are managers. That is not a scarce skill. They must give those positions to us. Let me rest my case for now. I understand that you follow me.
Good. Okay, scarce skills. And what do we do about that? Thanks. You've raised that issue. Let's see how others may respond to that, right? Let's get to Wonga now. Wonga, hi. Talking about e-tolls, yeah?
Hi, Ashraf. I just want to talk about e-tolls, but I just want to narrate a short story. In the Eastern Cape a few years ago, the SATU people wanted to toy when the Eastern Cape government wanted to take away their rural allowance. The government promised that the rural allowance won't be taken. Immediately after the vote, all that was taken. So what Mr. Lusufi is saying is what they are just trying to attract voters to vote for them. Maybe I'll be wrong if I could say he's desperate to become a premier in a fully term that is going to start. But I can tell you, nothing that these ANC people will do and then be according to what they say. Nothing.
So what do you mean nothing? But if they said they're going to scrap e-tolls, they've done that now. So they have done it, right?
Yeah, Ashraf.
Yeah.
They have done it. Listen to what the minister said. He said,
"No, I think we've just lost. We've lost that call, which is a bad connection. Pity Wonga. Maybe we'll talk to you some other time. Really pity. Okay, let's move on to something else that's I think really important. So on this day, it was a Saturday. Do you remember that? In 1993, Saturday morning, we all got the news, the horrific news about the assassination of Chris Hani, and so many things came out of the trauma of that day and the possible fallout in the days ahead and the years ahead, that to the point that so many people still continue asking questions even now about the big what ifs. Okay, so I want to go back to 2 years before Chris Hani was assassinated. He addressed the National Press Club, and he spoke about some of the issues. Remember, that is the period we still did not vote, so we were still not a democracy. And he raised some really important issues about the then apartheid government that I want you to listen to this.
It is just over a year since the de Klerk government unbanned the African National Congress, the PAC, the party, and other organizations. It was an act of courage on his part after so many years of naked repression by his predecessors. We believe that the crisis which gripped our country for so many years at least made de Klerk a realist and forced him to take the only option that was available, namely to unban the ANC and to release the leaders of the ANC and to allow, even on a temporary basis, those who were in exile to come back. I think it is important to assess this period. What has happened in South Africa within this year since the ANC was unbanned? For the first time in our history, leaders of a liberation movement engaged a racist government in discussions on a basis of equality. We discussed the critical problems facing the country in an attempt to resolve the crisis of apartheid and racism, and to work out a new dispensation in our country. And that dispensation, of course, in our view, is a united, non-racial, and democratic South Africa. I think generally there's broad agreement on this issue. In their statements, the leaders of the Nationalist Party have expressed their commitment to a non-racial democratic South Africa. There are differences about the modalities towards this objective. The ANC is putting forward the idea of an interim government and a constituent assembly. It is our view that since the government is both a player and a referee, that position would not guarantee us impartiality. We had, earlier in the year, called for an all-party Congress where the different groups would meet to discuss the broad principles of a new constitution. There was an agreement on this between the ANC and the Nationalist Party government, although the PAC and other organizations had reservations about this. As I indicated, ladies and gentlemen, there have been 2 major meetings with the government so far, culminating in the Grooteskuur and Pretoria minutes. There have been various working groups composed of representatives of the government and the ANC. Agreements were hammered out on the release of political prisoners and the return of exiles. As you are aware, we also made a commitment to suspend armed actions and related activities. Another area of concern on the part of the African National Congress is the issue of sanctions. White politicians, including the government in our country, feel that they've done enough to warrant the lifting of sanctions. They say they've already committed themselves to the scrapping of apartheid. And indeed, on paper, at any rate, they've repealed some laws. The victims of apartheid, the ANC, PAC, Party, COSATU, etc., are saying very little has happened in our country. We are saying it is premature to lift sanctions, and that sanctions should be lifted when we who have been oppressed and who are still being oppressed come out and say, we have now begun to negotiate in our country.
So, Chris Hani, 2 years before he was assassinated. So here's the question, right? Let's just assume Chris Hani would be alive today, right? Well, here's two things. What would he be saying is still the big issues outstanding 30 years into democracy? That's in terms of service delivery, what's missing for the people of South Africa. And perhaps just as important is, what role do you think Chris Hani would be playing in South Africa today? Where would he be placed? What role would he be playing in shaping South Africa 2024 and beyond? And that's even more important considering we have a national election coming up pretty soon. You know that. So give me your thoughts. You can call in or WhatsApp, text or voice note. Voice notes 0614 104 107. And then to call in 086 000 2032. I certainly want to know what you have to say about Chris Hani and the role he would be playing if he were alive in South Africa today. I want to know. There's lots of other people talking about South Africa's national purpose, which I will pick up in a moment. Right, so yesterday, we spoke to the outgoing Reverend Michael Wieder from St. George's Church in Cape Town. And interestingly enough, he was speaking about culture and community and impact on civil society and or social society in that case. Yeah. One of the things he made the point about that even, for example, in Ramadan, right, which is the Muslim month of fasting, which for South Africans ends predominantly today. Some parts of the Northern Hemisphere ended yesterday, so today they're celebrating Eid, okay? So we have Eid tomorrow. So I will not be here tomorrow, just so that you know that. But anyway, the point he made was that how fasting impacts society beyond the core Muslim community because of the nature of Ramadan and what Ramadan calls upon society to uplift humanity. And we thought, let's talk about that with my guest, Dr. Qureisha Suleiman, who's from the National Institute of the Humanities and Social Sciences. She's a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria. Dr. Suleiman, appreciate your time and great that you join us on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Ashraf.
Thank you. Well, first time on this show since I've taken over once again, so thank you for that. So I thought, myself and Temba had a chat about it. My producer said, you know what, who can best talk to us about the social impact of Ramadan in South African society, not in Muslim society? And we thought, let's talk to you about it. So what do you say?
Well, certainly. I mean, it's a very special moment in terms of the moments of the country and in terms of interaction between citizens. But there's a context to that, and that particular context is that Muslim life and Muslim actions, behavior, etc., has largely been projected onto the large-scale public based upon the particular biases and views of mainstream media. Social media has introduced the Muslim human to the world. And it is a narrative that is completely different to the narrative that has been spun post 9/11, of course, about the collapse of the Cold War, looking for that alternate enemy, which was then the Muslims. So that negative image, that bias that came about. But what we can see is that with the opportunity and the access to different mediums and means of encountering the Muslim and Ramadan and what it signifies, etc., perceptions have started to change. And I think that too in South Africa. With the latest issue with the Gaza genocide, we find that there has been a significant movement amongst people on the ground to collaborate on different issues. And Ramadan has sparked a significant change in this. And you see a lot of people have come to query, have joined the mass iftars, have started to ask about Ramadan, are fasting, and looking at the social impact of it. Why do you fast? And when you understand the deeper intricacies of why it is that Muslims fast, you can understand the famine, for example, in Gaza. Or if you understand what it is, why you were holding, it is a form of discipline. A discipline for what? to tame the ego. And if you look at the world around us, you look at the excessive ego, especially amongst the political elite. Why are you fasting? It is to understand and appreciate the gifts that God has given us. Why? So that we can value what the earth has to offer. And then compare that against the political climate in which, there's a theft of resources, there's the abuse and exploitation, the denial of the common humanity. So all of these things have come into play. And I think South African society has been amazing in the way in which they have opened up to begin to appreciate and understand these nuances and are coming to the fore.
Well, what's interesting, so fasting would be, on one hand, it's deeply personal, although many people here at work are aware that I can't drink water for 3 hours when you're hosting a show, and that's just a no. But, that's what we do, right? So that's the one thing. Then you mentioned the iftar, which is the mass communal eating together, and that's been widespread in many parts of the city, or the country, in fact, right? But the third part is the social upliftment because of acts of charity by obviously Muslim-based religious organizations inspired by Ramadan and the act of giving, and how that impacts the broader South African society. And that really is what the Reverend Michael Weeder was referring to.
Yeah, but I think to limit it only to Ramadan would be an injustice to the acts of charity that Muslims do throughout the year. And then they do it without having, without waiting for an event to occur. It's just part of the natural ongoing process of what Islam teaches us.
Okay, I hear that, but my question, just to be narrow about it, what do they do in Ramadan that really expands beyond their community?
Okay, so that is, in terms of sharing food, going out to people, to assisting people, there's a significant amount of upliftment that happens. So you identify, areas and spaces where your charity can make a significant difference. And I see that a lot of the Muslim NGOs are now beginning to divert and diversify in terms of how they uplift. Fundamentally, a very significant contribution has been about the boreholes, the putting up of boreholes and supplying water, and fixing up facilities in schools, and in areas where, we still have the problem with toilets, etc. So there you see that all of these things are coming into play, and they are reaching out to the communities, to the people around them. So closest to you. First look at those closest to you and then move on. And this has been fantastic, yes.
Okay, we've got about a minute to go. Here's the thing. Obviously, many people may support the broader society in their own way, privately, and maybe people are not aware of it. But the reality is, many people inspired by the Islamic faith in Ramadan would actually give monies to various, charitable organizations and NGOs or NPOs. So who do they distribute to and then redistribute to communities?
Well, there's a significant amount of Muslim NGOs. There's local NGOs. A lot of them are female-based and run by women who then operate in their own communities, informal settlements. Most of us, we grew up and we've lived in the areas that are closest to the, to the informal settlements, etc. So there's too much of poverty in the areas around us. And the women are then working there. I know personally the female organization that I work with, they're doing blanket distributions. They're doing feeding schemes on a regular basis. They're doing school stationery, buying books, etc. for the students and helping with school fees. So like that. And then there's the bigger organizations that you have, like Gift of the Givers, Alinga, etc., who do the far bigger projects around them. So Muslims identify, and you must understand, one more thing, is that there's a significant amount of distrust, how the money is being spent. So you have to be careful about who you give the money to make sure that there's maximum impact.
Fair enough. I think somebody mentioned SENZAF as well, does it? What is your organization, the one that you support through the charitable funds?
The Caring Women's Forum.
Caring.
So we have one in Pretoria and one in Johannesburg.
Certainly aware of them. They do fantastic work. That's where we can leave it, Dr. Qureisha Suleiman. In advance, best wishes for you and your family and the broader community. Eid Mubarak as we get to the end of Ramadan today, certainly in South Africa. Dr. Qureisha Ismail Suleiman from the National Institute of Humanities and Social Sciences, as a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Political Science at the University of Pretoria. Let's get the news now. Just gone 4:01 with Eva Chiba.
Thanks, Ashraf. Top stories for this hour. IEC Code of Conduct signed by parties contesting in Limpopo, and one injured in a robbery in Durban. Good afternoon, I'm Eva Chipa. Political parties that will be contesting the May 29th general elections in Limpopo have all supported the IEC's Code of Conduct by signing a pledge to promote a free and fair electoral process. The Commission says the pledge is important as it reminds political parties to desist from acts of intolerance, violence and interfering in the electoral process, among others. The chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Mosotho Moyepya, says unethical behavior from political parties and candidates will be subjected to penalties and criminal sanctions.
It is a solemn pact, a commitment to uphold sanctity, the sanctity of our democratic institutions and the will of the people they represent. However, we have learned that election after election, and sometimes, sadly, there are instances witnessed of this code being flouted. We have experienced the manipulation of public sentiment and the erosion of trust in our electoral activities. This simply cannot be tolerated.
The High Court in Polokwane, Limpopo is satisfied that the state witness in the murder trial of 5 men accused of killing Collins Chabane Municipal Mayor Moses Maluleke was reliable and truthful. Judge Violet Semenya was referring to the testimony given by state witness Avatakari Mulaudzi. The 5 suspects stand accused of killing Maluleke at his home in July 2022. Judge Semenya says the fact that Mulaudzi told the court that the prosecutor persuaded him on what to say during his testimony is an indication that he is an honest person.
A reasonable court can only arrive at a conclusion that he is a truthful witness instead of labeling him as a liar. What I do not accept is that renders Mr. Mulaudzi an unreliable and untruthful witness.
One person has been injured in a shooting incident at a shopping centre on Kensington Drive in Durban North. It's believed to be linked to a store robbery. Advanced Life Support Paramedic spokesperson Gareth Jameson explains.
Paramedics responded to the scene and found security and SAPS already in attendance and were shown through to a shop that had allegedly been robbed by criminals. Paramedics found one male, believed to be in his 40s, who had sustained a single gunshot wound to his leg. He was stabilized on scene by Advanced Life Support Paramedics before being transported through to a nearby hospital for the further care that he required. SAPS were in attendance, had cordoned off the entire area and will be investigating this matter further.
In other news, an Indian-based pesticide and agrochemical company, UPL, claims that independent water tests conducted after the discovery of a large number of dead fish on Umhlanga beaches and in a nearby estuary at the weekend points to the possibility that it could have been caused by sewage spills. UPL warehouse north of Durban was set alight during the 2021 unrest. This caused a spill of a cocktail of chemicals and pesticides into the Umhlanga River. Dries Liedenberg reports.
According to UPL, these tests show a significant drop-off of water oxygen levels below the Blackburn Village informal settlement. A sewage pump station in that area was extensively damaged in the 2022 floods, but has been repaired since. UPL claims sewage was overflowing from that pump station and infrastructure elsewhere at the weekend. I am Dries Liebenberg for SABC News in Durban.
And lastly, the Olympic movement is ending a 130 years of tradition and will now allow prize money to be paid to gold medalists in athletics. The BBC's Andy Swiss has more on this.
It is a radical move. Throughout its 128-year history, the modern Olympics has been an amateur event with no prize money. But World Athletics say at this summer's Games they'll award $50,000 to each individual track and field champion, with victorious relay teams sharing the same amount, making a total prize pot of nearly $2.5 million. From the 2028 Olympics, silver and bronze medalists will also be rewarded. But it's a move which is likely to upset traditionalists, and the International Olympic Committee is yet to comment.
Recapping the top story at 4, political parties that will be contesting the May 29th general elections in Limpopo have all supported the IEC's Code of Conduct by signing a pledge to promote a free and fair electoral process. I'll be back at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Eva Chipam.
And coming up in your sports this hour, McIlroy chases career Grand Slam, Middendorp speaks on surviving the drop, and Simbini hails World Athletics for awarding prize money at Olympics. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, there are two queues on your way to the airport coming out of Pretoria today. One is the roadworks at Clayville, and that's a reasonably heavy backlog. But then after that, by the time you get to the Engen garages, you're backlogging down to a crash scene just after the Bopsfontein exit. So two queues to work through. Make sure you've got plenty of time to get through and connect with your flights on time. The N1 coming out of Pretoria, also fairly busy today from Rigel Avenue. Traffic sitting down towards the R21 interchange. Durban's N2 South, which normally sort of eases up this time of afternoon, not really being given a chance to because there's another breakdown before Spaghetti Junction. So coming down from Inanda Road, side over Umgena Road into 4 level, it remains heavy. It has been since about 8:30 this morning. Also a crash in the roadworks at Paradise Valley on the N3 outbound. That traffic all of a sudden parking back towards the Pavilion Shopping Mall side. And if you're driving into Cape Town on the M3, expecting a clear run from the Newland side, which you normally would get this time of afternoon, not today. There's been a crash on the M3 into town by Woolsack Drive. Traffic is backlogging from UCT, and it's causing a delay with onlooking for motorists going out through Hospital Bend for a turn onto that M3 South. Also, just note the M7 Jake Skirvell Drive, no traffic lights at Milton Street in Goodwood area, so that traffic coming south from the N1 highway into Goodwood quite heavily backed up. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you.
Saturday nights on S3 are about to get dramatic. Tune into The Player at 9:30 p.m. and catch Wesley Snipes as a pit boss as he and his team gamble on the ability of security expert Philip Winchester to stop some of the biggest crimes imaginable from playing out. Can he take them down from the inside and get revenge for the death of his wife? Or is it true what they say? The house always wins. Channel your best drama with The Player, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on
So, a lady from Air Officini just turned 55, and although I'm still a spring chicken, there's a part of me that envies her, especially since she now qualifies for a Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account with capital guaranteed. Talk about FOMI, huh, voice man?
If you mean FOMO, then definitely, boss man. And she can earn up to 12.6% interest. Anyone over 55 can open theirs via the Nedbank Money app in less than 2 minutes. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
2 years since winning the EFC middleweight title in the most dramatic and controversial fashion, Luke Michael finally defends his belt for the very first time at EFC 112 against the imposing submission machine, J.P. Kruger. And in the co-main event, featherweight champion Iga Smiley Cabeza becomes the next athlete aiming for champ status as he battles the imposing Kaleka Block Kabanda. EFC 112 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Indeed, get a feel of the nation's pulse by listening to, well, the National Pulse. Certainly hope you're enjoying the show and welcome your feedback all throughout the show. You can tweet us, by the way, tweet to the X platform. Just tag SAFM Radio. You can tag me, Ashraf Garda, on all social media platforms, by the way. But the important hashtag to use is the National Pulse. You got that? The National Pulse. We've asked questions about, we played that Chris Hani soundbite, and we asked the questions about, what do you think if Chris Hani were in a position of leadership today, if you're alive today, where would he be? And how would he shape the country's thinking right now? I certainly want to know, and you can comment even further by calling in or WhatsApp. So to call in 086 000 2032, WhatsApp text or voice notes 0614 104 107. Ideally, the voice notes should be about a minute. I mean, that's the ideal situation because somebody's asking about that. That's what it should be, right? I'll pick out some of the other comments we've got in a moment or two, as well as people commenting about the impact of Ramadan in broader South African society. This is ahead of the last day of Ramadan today and ahead of Eid tomorrow. Now, you may be aware, in fact, I'm looking at a picture now of the residents of Hammanskraal having to go out and find water. I picked up from the Mail and Guardian a few days ago from Delwyn Verasamy. And really, you just wonder, there's just so many issues like this, right? Because as you know, there was this huge water problem, and then the community around the Hammanskraal region were affected by cholera. And there's been promises that government will deal with that. So let's find out now, since that happened a week or two ago, what's happened since. We'll chat to the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, David Matlobo, just now, not quite. But let's first get a sense of what the community is feeling. With me is Jeffrey Niati Kazi, who's the Zonal Secretary of Senko in the Hammanskraal region. Jeffrey, appreciate your time and thank you for joining me on the National Pulse.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Now, I understand we'll chat to the Deputy Minister just now, but what has happened since then? I mean, you're obviously aware of what's happened then. What's the position regarding support so that the community can drink clean water since then?
As the Minister for Water and Sanitation, giving the report to say around September we'll be getting clean water. That's the report that we got from the minister and all departments from Mahalis and also the mayor, the one who was useless for not assisting the complaints of Hammanskraal. Practically, we are not convinced. It's only the report. Remember, 26 to 35 people died of cholera. But when they get the report, they're saying it was not caused by cholera. And then even ourselves, we are not hit at all. Now, they've been saying around March, that was the President of South Africa saying investigation should be done. But even now, they're talking about the time frame of September. But now we are not drinking clean water. We are still struggling, more especially the providers with water truck. Even though those water are not clean, we are still struggling. We are not convinced. It's only the report. What we want is practical things to see that we need clean water, nothing else.
So today, I mean, there was this, let's call it a site visit, right, from the Minister of Water and Sanitation, and as well as the Tshwane mayor, right? What happened with that tour of the affected regions?
Come again?
I was saying today, I understand there was the Minister of Water and Sanitation together with the Tshwane mayor who actually undertook an oversight project inspection of the affected areas and the Rooiwal wastewater treatment works. Do you know much about that? What's come through?
Yes, we've been told that they were busy monitoring the process of this water waste treatment plant. But our concern as residents who said they were supposed to invite all stakeholders. When we talk about all stakeholders, we are talking about the South African National Civic Organization and other organizations, including the chief. Remember, Hammanskraal, we still have some chiefs around our area. They were supposed to invite each and every stakeholder around Hammanskraal. Now, they're saying, no, we have invited everyone. But to my concern is that the South African National Civic Organization, which is SANCO, dealing with the community, we were not invited. And other stakeholders were not invited. So they're saying the process is on. That's what they've said between the mayor and the Minister of Water and Sanitation.
Okay, and you're saying the water is not drinkable as it stands, right?
It is not drinkable at all.
Okay. Did anybody give you any indication as to when the non-drinkable water will become drinkable water?
What they've said is that the time frame is around September. We'll be drinking clean water. That's what they've said. And at the same time, there will be employment. Remember, they will make sure that Rooiwal should employ other people so that they can benefit from that. But nevertheless, we are not talking about a benefit. We are saying we want clean water, nothing else.
Well, September, quite honestly, bluntly, it's a long, long time away. I can tell you now, I would think if that was in many of the South Africa's suburbs of the big metropolitan areas and you told the residents there that you will not drink clean water for 6 months, phew,
that's true.
I don't know how they'd respond.
And then our another concern, we are talking about the victim who has died of cholera, 23 to 35 people. Remember, they've called those victims to Mandela Hall to compensate those individuals, those victims, with 15,000 to 30,000. And then when we ask, they say it's only for the what we call the funeral costs. But now my question is that some of the victims, those who die of cholera, they were beneficiaries. So now nothing happened.
Okay.
So they're still struggling to get something to survive.
All right.
So that's our problem.
Okay. Well, it is a big problem indeed. There's just no question about it. Jeffrey, thank you for your time. I'm going to speak now to the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation. So you may want to listen in as well. Jeffrey Niatikazi was the Zonal Secretary of SANCO in Hammanskraal. He's suggesting that I've been told that the problems of water and the cholera infected water, as a result of that, they can't drink the water and that will not be clean enough to be consumed for 6 months. How do you respond to that? Well, with me, the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, David Matlobo. Appreciate your time, Deputy Minister. You've obviously heard my conversation with the representative from SANCO. And the first thing he's saying is, like, we've been told there's no clean water, no drinkable water for another, September. So I'm saying 6 months.
No, thank you very much, Ashraf, and to your listeners across the length and breadth of our land. Today, we went there. We were led by the Minister Mtunu, myself, and DM Shabalala, including the MEC for Copter, Comrade Nzikumala representing the Prima, then the Mayor Councillor Brink was there. And you'll recall that the President went there after the tragic incident where more than 34 lives were lost, and there were a number of decisions that were made. If you could recall, one of the decisions was to say a proper investigation should be done so that we can be in a position to determine what was the cause of these problems. Secondly, was that the city of Tshwane has struggled to actually ensure that its infrastructure, the wastewater system, and the raw water system that involves your Rooiwal and the Themba water treatment works, the quality of the water that was getting out in the taps, as per our own report as a department, as our Human Rights Commission, it was confirmed that that water is not safe for use. Therefore, the intervention at the epicenter of the problem of the wastewater treatment plant must be dealt with. But while we are dealing with that, then we had to agree with them after they never worked with us for some time. Then we worked together with the current mayor. We brought BBSA. When we brought BBSA, because we needed about 4 billion, it took long, and ultimately work has commenced. BBSA is on the ground. That's what we saw today, fixing the plant, because if you don't fix that infrastructure aspect, you have a problem that people will not have safe drinking water. Then we could see today that you go there. For an example, the aeration system, it has 6 chambers. Only 1 chamber, they've fixed them out. They are working on the primary recycling tanks and the secondary recycling tanks. There was a contractor there who did a shoddy job, left one of the recycling tanks at 70%. Then the SIU came on board on the decision of the President with our support. Then the Metro to cooperate so that they can deal with that particular issue. In the meantime, when we respond, how does the citizens of Hammanskraal and the surrounding get water while this plant is going to be fixed? Because this plant is going to be finished around 2027. Then we agreed.
Sorry, so just to confirm that the plant will be finished when? Just give me the timeline.
The wastewater treatment works, which is the Rooiwal water system.
Right.
DBSA is going to finish in the year 26-27.
So that's like another 2 more years, or 3 years maybe.
And then what is currently happening now, the effluent from many surrounding of Tshwane still comes into that Rooiwal water treatment plant, 150 megaliters, which is 150 million liters. Come there. It's partially treated. When it's partially treated, as that, it goes to a river called Apis. It goes to the treatment plant. The water that goes to communities that come from the Rooiwal system in Temba is still polluted, is not fit for use. And the municipality, we agreed with them, continue to tell citizens that don't use this water because it's going to cause problems. Yes, today I was chairing the team of community myself. The issue the communities are complaining that sometimes because this water is partially treated, sometimes human excreta, which is the human waste, is coming out of the taps. And inhumane, unacceptable.
Well, it's clearly unacceptable. So, I mean, you made the point. I mean, the investigations have taken place, but that could take a while, right? What are the preliminary investigations? What do the preliminary investigations say?
No. We concluded the investigation. Remember, we brought the Water Research Commission, and minister assigned me to work closer with them. They could not do a conclusive evidence of a correlationship of those who passed on the basis that it was because of related issue. But there were strains around the system, entire system. When they did the investigation, the Water Research Commission, that bacteria which is related to cholera, that viprobacteria, was there in the water. But then there was a tracing by even the NSAID, what happened. We communicated to those decisions. Other matter we said is that people can't wait to wait for 26, 27. In the meantime, what we do? Then the president and the minister agreed that Mahali's water, because it's one of the service providers, there is an area called Cliff Drift. There is a river there. It's called Pinas Refir. That Pinas Refir has sufficient water. We then said, in the meantime, put a mobile plant, which is a package plant. And that package plant is going to treat about 50 megaliters of water. And to do a mobile plant of that size, it has never happened before. It's too big from a technical point of view. Now the contract, today we went on site not to do only salt training. The contractor is currently working on the abstraction point. They have about 1.3 kilometers that they need to do, so that they are able to bring the line into the package plant.
Okay.
The package plant will be finished the first module will be finished in September. Then it will give them an additional 12.5 megaliters. Then in October, they will get an additional 12.5, which is 25.
So I got that about the September part, right? So in the interim period, I mean, the point made by Jeffrey Nyatikazi, that in fact, at this point in time, the water is not drinkable. Is that correct? And then what then do the community do? Like I'm talking about today and tomorrow.
No, but in areas where there is no water, government used to provide water through either the groundwater system, which is small. They are also providing water through the tanker. In Tshwane, the tankering, there are some challenges that are associated with the tankering. Yesterday, I was in an area in Ward 100. There are many challenges. The number of tankers that they've brought to them, they are not consistent. Then the monitoring system that they must monitor, that who's the driver, what is the telephone number, what is the license number of the car. And we said that they must ensure that the water is picked up from the point where the water is clean, because you can't bring water that is actually dead.
All right, just to wrap up quickly then, Deputy Minister, what has been the response of the people? I mean, when you've explained to them the current situation, what's going to happen in September, October, and then next year and the year after, how has the community responded to this dire situation?
The community was very, very positive. They were very happy. Jeffrey, my comrade, decided deliberately to actually mislead. One, he was there. I allowed him to speak in a meeting. The traditional leaders are there. The biggest issue here, the municipality must communicate, Ashraf. They must communicate to say if they are providing water in a temporary basis through triggering, when are they going to do it, at what time, in which area they're going to do it. The communities with their water committees and councillors must monitor that particular way.
So which part? So no, you mentioned Jeffrey Nyatikazi is deliberately misleading us. Which part is the Senco representative misleading us?
No. He says he was not invited. He was there. Even the people who raised the matter with the Human Rights Commission, I went with them in Parliament in 2019. They were there. The traditional leaders were there with Koshikekana. They're actually doing for training. Therefore, to come and say, no, this is not happening, that's not true. But the most important aspect is that all of them, they must work together. They must hold the political leadership accountable. The municipality must oversee that this work is given. The communities must be given information. As the Minister of Water, we are going to monitor that this local government and the province, they live up to their dictum of ensuring that the right of citizens to have water and quality water is actually provided on an ongoing basis.
That's where we can leave it. Some may say it's hot water, but I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say. Hopefully this issue gets completely resolved. What has happened already has been horrific, losing 35, 36 lives through cholera, and long may this situation get fixed up very quickly, because it really is a desperate situation. So thank you for your time, David Matlobo, the Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation. I tell you what, we've had lots of people responding to the voice note we played around Chris Hani and my call to say, so Chris Hani, today being alive, where do you see yourself, where do you see him fitting in to the South African political landscape in terms of position, and what would he be saying, keeping in mind he had huge influence over political parties in terms of his own party, the ANC or the SACP, and also in terms of the electorate. So where would you see him fitting in? This series of voice notes people have sent already. Let's play them.
He will also be angry that the education system now is not yielding the required end results in terms of employment, skills, and also the corporate not investing back there and hard-earned profits on our backs back to the economy.
So education, I think I don't have to even amplify that. It's absolutely spot on about where are we with education. Here's another.
He will also be angry that the education system now is not yielding the required end results in terms of employment, skills, and also the corporate not investing back there.
Lukman Western Cape. I think if Kazani was alive today, his whole would have been, that we would have been in a much better place than we are now. I think the influence and the passion that they had for people and for the country, we wouldn't have seen this corrupt, incompetent leadership, I think we would have been in a much better place, and I truly hope for all the other leaders that, with him, before him, was here today. Today we jump up and down for corrupt politicians and think where they fail, we rejoice. So it's sad where we are, So we have a leadership crisis ourselves. And let's just hope and pray that things going to change on 29th of May.
Well, I think, here's the one, being very emphatic from, I think, the Western Cape, that South Africa would be in a far better place if Chris Hani were alive today. I mean, do you think the same way? And therefore, that question, where do you see him fitting in today if he were alive? And how would he influence, in this case, well, the national pulse? What would he be doing around getting us to feel what we feel or do not feel what we feel right now? You think about that, and I certainly welcome again WhatsApp's text or voice notes, and you can also call in, that, and you can also tweet us onto the X platform. Just tag SAFM Radio and tag me using the hashtag #TheNationalPulse. Pulse 4:30. Here's the news headlines with Eva Chiba.
Thanks, Ashraf. In your news making headlines for this hour, Parliament's Powers and Privileges Committee wrapped up its investigation against the former Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. This relates to the salary increase of the Secretary to Parliament, Xolile George, last year. In other news, political parties that will be contesting the May 29th general elections in Limpopo have all supported the IEC's Code of Conduct by signing a pledge to promote a free and fair electoral process. The Commission says the pledge is important as it reminds political parties to desist from acts of intolerance, violence and interference in the electoral process, amongst others. And lastly, student beneficiaries of the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, NSFAS, will soon embark on a national shutdown, halting operations at universities across the country over the delayed payments of allowances. The frustrated students say that NSFAS has not paid out allowances for the month of April, resulting in them not being able to buy food and pay their rent. Mudubi Makalemele will have more details at the top of the hour. For SFM News, good afternoon. I'm Eva Chipa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
R21 is a very busy route today. If you're driving from Pretoria to the airport, there's the usual roadwork disruptions flowing you into the Clayville area. And then once you emerge from that, you're pretty much back into some heavy stuff straight away, lining up into a crash scene just past the R21, R25 Butsfontein exit. So if you're on the way to the airport for flight connections, make sure you've got plenty of time to get through those two queues. Also, if you're leaving the airport on route towards Pretoria, there's been a crash R21 North at the R23 exit, so some queuing pressure there. Broken down vehicle just past Allendale Road on the N1 North. That is already backing traffic from Mike 1 Melrose area. That's a heavy trip out of Joburg into Midrand today. Durban, a crash at Paradise Valley. It's in the roadwork, so another lane closure means a big delay from Spaghetti Junction out past Pavilion Mall on your way very slowly in towards that Pinetown area. And Cape Town today, no traffic lights on the N7 Jake's Curvell Drive at Milton Street in Goodwood. That's a queue coming south from the N1 highway. And the traffic lights have been a problem for a few days. They still are on the R44 at Annandale if you're leaving the busy Stellenbosch area. En route to Somerset West, some queuing pressure there as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
Right, let's talk sports. So we spoke the other day about the countdown to the Masters at the US Masters at Augusta.
Yeah.
And the winner will be?
Only time will tell. But talking about the Masters, Rory McIlroy will make his 10th attempt at completing a career Grand Slam this week at the Masters. McIlroy spent time with Harmon, best known as Tiger Woods' coach in his heyday, as part of his preparation for Augusta. McIlroy has had some tough moments at Augusta, especially in 2011 when the then 21-year-old led at the turn of the final round, but he ended up suffering a dramatic collapse on the back nine, leaving him 15th after an 8-over par 80. And this time around, he promises to make a more patient approach on a course where an aggressive strategy has cost him very dearly. Then in football, with only 7 matches to go and 5 points behind a playoff position, Cape Town Spurs head coach Ernst Middendorp is still confident that the team will have a big run and avoid the drop. Now, Spurs have now lost the last 3 matches in their 5-game winless streak, and with some big games still to come, it's interesting where Middendorp thinks the points will come from.
Performance today, I think we have seen in the second half, was not a crappy, mediocre team on the other side. And if you are capable to produce a number of opportunities, crossbar shots and so on, I think, and to keep your shape, and despite you have chasing with all possession dominance on the other side, our game in Port Elizabeth was also not in a way that you can say it was crappy. We delivered, and then the team sit down. I think it was an unbelievable moment. I see the players in training session. I see the players day in, day out. And I think the games, to handle it, is definitely something where you have a certain moment to think about that it can happen, and it will happen.
Well, there's some UEFA Champions League action to look forward to tonight. Paris Saint-Germain will be hoping to put one foot in the semi-finals when Barcelona visit for tonight's mouthwatering quarter-final first leg meet at Parc des Princes. It's not the only clash for today. Borussia Dortmund are away to Atletico Madrid with both games kicking off at 9 p.m. In tennis, Andrew Rublev's Monte Carlo Masters title defense ended today with a straight sets defeat to Alexei Popyrin. Popyrin eased to a 6-4 and 6-4 win. The world number 46 will next face Alex de Minaur tomorrow for a possible quarterfinal against Novak Djokovic. Then finally, South African sprint sensation Akani Simbini has hailed World Athletics for awarding prize money at the Olympic Games. The global governing body said a total prize pot of 44.4 million rand has been made available for this year's Olympics in Paris, with a gold medalist receiving around 925,000 rands. This will be extended to silver and bronze medalists at Los Angeles 2028, and Simbini says that it gives added motivation to win a gold medal.
It's really exciting that World Athletics has decided to pump more money into athletics and into games. You know, it's been a big thing to go to the games, but now there's an added incentive to go to the games and get the gold medal. You know, so I guess World Athletics is trying to pump more money into the athletes, and which is something that we need. And yeah, I guess this is their way of doing it. So really exciting and looking forward to pushing and running and trying to get that gold medal for South Africa.
You think that's a good thing, that they prize money for the Olympic Games, or should it be like this honourable amateur movement as it always was in the past?
I think it's great, man. I think just to give that thing, it just adds that honor to that whole thing. I know that, yes, the IOC was not giving prize money, but the athletes also now are going to be extra motivated, even though some of them are saying obviously it's not about the money, just competing at the Olympics. Like we said in the previous hour, that it would have been great for Banyana just to be at the Olympics, because it's a great honor to be there. But now, as Akani just said, great and better motivation for them as athletes to get a gold medal.
It's less even about motivation. I don't necessarily agree about the motivation part, but I agree with the one part, especially with the lesser income generating sports.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
That it is a greater incentive to take that sport seriously as a career builder, primarily, as opposed to like a side job.
True.
Because you know that you're actually going to get paid if you get to the Olympic Games, whether you win or lose. That's besides other forms of sponsorship. So that for me would be the big motivation.
And that is true, because looking at sports like hockey, our hockey national team is now trying to get funds. They're trying to go to the Olympics via crowdfunding, because they don't have...
And that shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. And then they're going to go there and compete. Should they win, they're not actually going to get any money from it.
Okay, there you have it. But the Olympic Games, I think, historically was amateur, and that changed as the world has changed over time. Maybe rightfully so. Anything else? No, that's it?
That's it from my side. I'll have more in the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Kapele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation.
The boys of Steve Barker resist to leave the pitch without a ticket to the semis. But there's a big problem. Kevin Hunt's boys say the last dance of happiness belongs to them. This is the Nedbank Cup quarterfinal battle. Stellies versus Matsatsansa Pitori on Saturday, 13 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
South Africa is facing an increase in people diagnosed with non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, cancers, hypertension, lung problems, and obesity. This also increases the number of people living with these diseases and mental health.
Many people living with these preventable diseases may not be immediately aware unless they go for health screening and testing.
It is our responsibility to invest in our healthier future through regular physical activity, healthy diets, and avoiding risky health behaviors such as alcohol and tobacco use.
The Department of Health urges people to go for regular health screening for early detection and effective treatment if they are diagnosed with any of these conditions.
This message is brought to you by the National Department of Health.
2 years since winning the EFC middleweight title in the most dramatic and controversial fashion, Luke Michael finally defends his belt for the very first time at EFC 112 against the imposing submission machine, J.P. Kruger. And in the co-main event, featherweight champion Iga Smiley Cabeza becomes the next athlete aiming for champ status as he battles the imposing Kaleka Block Kabanda. EFC 112 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
In a moment, we'll talk about the game changer, and that's the MK party in the light of what happened yesterday. In the meantime, let's talk about the markets. Yes, with the market update with Makwe Masilela. He's the Chief Investment Officer at the Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, hi.
Hi, Ashraf. Good afternoon to the listeners.
Good afternoon. Right, go ahead.
Yeah. We started the session with Fitch Ratings Agency revising its outlook for China's sovereign rating to negative, citing increasing risk to public finance. And markets also started the session squarely focusing on U.S. consumer price index inflation. The reading comes just days after a blowout non-farm payrolls report that we got last Friday, which led to traders to severely cut their expectations for a June rate cut. And a string of Fed officials speaking now lately warned that sticky inflation will delay any potential rate cuts this year, and the March CPI, as expected, was expected to bring a piece of heavyweight evidence to either validate or disapprove of the Fed's view that the hotter than anticipated readings in the previous 2 months were just a bump, and as expected, the US CPI knocked the markets as it topped the forecast, and that was for a third month in a row, and that will likely delay any Fed interest rate cuts until later in the year. And the knee-jerk reaction was yields and the dollar jumping as the door was basically slammed on the June rate cut, making the likes of the rand to fall. But apparently, a survey showing that the ruling party ANC may get only 37% of the votes on May 29th also dented our currency. And the question, Ashraf, still remains whether the stock market will see this inflation reading as more than a bump in the inflation road. We've seen sharp reversals before after getting inflation surprising on the upside, though other market participants feel that for a third straight month, this can no longer be called a blip, and we've seen the yellow metal slipping after the US CPI boosted speculation that the US Fed will be in no rush to cut interest rates, as high interest rates increases the opportunity cost of holding gold. Also, a firmer dollar exacerbated the situation. Gold, as it is now, is down 0.2% at 2,348. At some point, it was down 1%. Platinum is down 1.7% at 974. And oil is caught up between the security of supply, that is from the Middle East, and also lack of demand, as evidenced in bigger than expected crude inventories. We see now the Brent crude is flat at $89 a barrel. The Dow is down 1%, S&P is down 0.8%, CAC is down 0.3%, but the DAX and foods are up 0.2%, and the JSE is flat, with our industries up 1%, resources down 0.4%, financials down 1.4%, and unfortunately the rand has weakened against the major currencies, weakened 1.3% against the US dollar, trading at 18.72 and 23.54 to the pound, and 20.15 to the euro.
Right. What about commodities and other developments?
Commodities as it stands, we see that for the fact that the US dollar has been firming, most of them, or if not all of them, are priced in US dollars, so it makes it very expensive for holders of other currencies, and we've seen them going down, as we said, with the likes of platinum down almost 1.7%, or copper or silver also not doing well, and that's all because of a firmer US dollar that was driven by expectation being pushed a little bit to expectation have been moved to that interest rates won't be going down anytime soon.
Okay, anything else? That's it for today?
That's it for today. We'll still continue to see whether this is just a blip and the markets might maybe reverse the whole course, as we've seen that this is just a knee-jerk reaction. People still have to digest these numbers, or as we've done before, ignore all these higher than expected inflation numbers and continue with sentiments that is the markets continue to go up. It's just a question of wait and see, and especially after getting those minutes from the Fed later tonight.
Okay, that's it. Makwe Masilela. We'll talk to him again tomorrow from Makwe Fund Managers, right? In fact, there's a fascinating and a really interesting tweet I got, which I think picks up a lot in terms of the caller we had from, JCK, and I said, is JCK like JFK? So JCK as in JC Kaunda. That's what it is. But he then tweeted out to the X platform saying, Ashraf, your inquisitiveness led you to know me better. I am Sewani Kaunda, also known as Junior Certificate Standard 8 Form 3 JC. I ran with the nickname since 1974. So that's why. So JC is Junior Certificate. Okay, Junior Certificate Kaunda. And that nickname since 1974. That's a really cool call and a cool tweet to X. Certainly, thank you for that. Let's get to some other callers now. Butana on the line from Rosebank wants to talk about something that obviously affects him. He's in Rosebank in Johannesburg. E-tolls. Hi, Butana.
Good afternoon, my brother. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. You must be celebrating, I think.
Thank you very much, Premier, to scrapping these things. But it's not enough. Why should people of Gauteng to pay that 12 billion rand? These roads are not used exclusively by people of Gauteng. And remember, there was excellent suggestions. The government of Lesotho ignored them. We requested them to take only 10 cents and put it in the levy in the petrol. They rejected that. This thing would have been paid off long time ago. Or now, the debt must be prescribed the premier. If not, it must be treated as an irrecoverable debt and must be written off. And thank you for those citizens that have been paying nicodemously or continuously. They must understand that they have helped the government. And by the way, Premier, tell us, the fees of government, are they owing as well? Are they owing?
Okay.
If yes, when are they going to pay?
Well, I'll tell you what.
We didn't reject that user pay system. We did not. We come with solutions. And the government, they rejected them because they wanted to turn this thing as a feeding trap.
Okay, got that, Butana. You sound like you're a politician at a rally making a series of all-important points. All of them I may well agree with, but just making a point about your enthusiasm and the way you've come across. Thanks for that, Butana. Let's get to another call from Kabecha. Mzwandile wants to talk about, someone I suggested you speak about, Chris Hani. If he were alive today, where would he be positioned in the South African socio-political landscape? Hi, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ashraf. Just 3 things for me, quick ones. But before I get to them, I do want to compliment you being back on air. So nice to hear your voice.
Much appreciated. Very kind.
You've not aged one bit.
Well, that's the plan. Just stop at 5 years ago, and that's what it was. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Listen, just 3 things for me. Number one, just remember, Chris Hani in 2024 would have been 82 years old. Now the question is, would he have what he had to say? Would it really matter? And I'll tell you why I'm asking that. Because the political establishment sidelines everyone who's in opposition of it and who has a different content that is people-based. Then the second point I want to raise, though, is leaders peak at different times of their life cycles. Mm-hmm. Chris Hani at the time was at his peak. He would not have been peaking in 2024. So let's not look backwards in terms of trying to get that direction. Then yes.
Yeah, no, I think you're raising a really important insight. That means you can't think it's the same person in the same party because that party has also evolved. So, but are you suggesting that he would have been sidelined in the years thereafter?
No, definitely it would have been. I mean, hence I'm saying that the most relevant, the people who are content-based within the ANC have been completely sidelined there, Ashraf. For that matter, earlier actually I wanted to call and ask you, the political discussions that we're having in 2024, how far different are they when you were on radio? Because it seemed as if we had more content-based discussions then than what we are having now. And then my last point on the Chris Hani matter, the questions we should ask ourselves is, where did they go wrong? And let me explain why. Because we are not producing the leaders that we should be producing. The responsibility of producing the leaders for tomorrow starts with the leaders that are there today. Therefore, I'm saying, actually, we might also be missing to identify that we might be having more Chris Hani today who happen to be sidelined, or they are not getting the
we don't know about
that they should be getting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll tell you what, Mzondile, you got me thinking, and that's really the whole plan of the National Pulse. Get a finger on the pulse, and I think you certainly have done just that. By the way, talking about leaders and leaders to lead, what about Jacob Zuma? Certainly there's a huge number of people, I think, that actually believes not only did he lead before, but he should lead now as well. It's particularly topical in the light of the conversation we had yesterday. As you probably know, the court ruling that former President Jacob Zuma, in fact, can stand for election. That means he can have his face, his image, his name on the ballot sheet if the MK party chooses to choose him, right? And that has implications, with the election itself. So we thought, let's talk about that, right, with Wayne Sussman, the political analyst and elections monitoring expert. Wayne, appreciate your time and thanks for joining me on the National Pulse. Fingers on the pulse, right?
Thank you, Ashraf, and I hope I've got the greeting right. Eid Mubarak to you. I don't know if it's today or tomorrow, but Eid Mubarak to you, and well done on this new assignment at SAFM. You've served the station well for many years, and I wish you the best of luck for this tenure.
Much appreciated. You have it right, and I'll communicate that message to your neighbour, who I just happen to know, by the way. But that's another conversation for another time, right? Right. Let's talk about the big. Let's talk. And thanks for the welcome back. Much appreciated as well, right? But I love your correspondence around elections. I'm going to just tell you that as well too, okay? So now you have this very difficult job of telling us what are the implications, not about the court ruling, because that's done already, right? But in terms of the MK party headed by Jacob Zuma going into election 2024. I'm suggesting, as I suggested yesterday, that this seems like a genuine game changer.
This is a genuine game changer, Ashraf. Look, we've also got data to prove it. There's opinion polls coming out, but we've also seen it in by-elections. And as you know, I monitor by-elections very closely and carefully. There is a lot of momentum with MK. And what I said even before the IEC made their deliberation on whether President Zuma could be a candidate or not, MK would have emerged stronger from it. And now that the court has found against the IEC's decision, I think this really gives President Zuma a lot of momentum. And this is the major talking point of our election. How far can President Zuma's MK go? How high can they go in the polls? Because I just want to give you one example. Let's say they get 20%, 25% in KwaZulu-Natal. That's 4 or 5% of the national vote. And you're already seeing signs in Gauteng and in Mpumalanga. MK is a major factor in this election, Ashraf.
Yeah, so again, whatever one may feel about the merits of Jacob Zuma, whether he should be allowed to stand or not, that we just put it by the wayside, because the reality is he now can stand, right? And here's the flip side to that. For most political parties that get formed, it takes years to be established. I think the best example would be the EFF, which probably has the highest profile in public spaces of any political party. The branding with the red outfits and the red beret, I think, is just brilliant. They dominate the social media spaces, as you know, and even them, they're just a notch above 10%, isn't it?
That is correct. And you raise an important point here. It's one thing taking percentage points away from the ANC, but you're taking structures, seasoned activists away who know how to fight elections, who know every trick in the book. And that is why you're seeing, particularly in the southern KwaZulu-Natal, in the Ubu district, some very key former ANC officials join Umkhonto weSizwe. So it's not just a loss of, these are skilled people who've run elections for many years. And again, that is why I think MK will do better than some of the new parties in this election, because of that very point you just made. They've done this before, they've done this rodeo before, and they know how to contest an election day. They'll also know where their supporters are, and I think they'll be very focused. And let's watch them. They've got a lot of momentum now. Can they keep it up between now and election day?
Well, I mean, look, some of the polls, and I understand some of the polls, there's been question marks about where they come from, but just based anecdotally, you get a sense that, as per you saying, they could leapfrog all the other new parties or smaller parties, which then puts them almost neck and neck already, if I'm being conservative, with the EFF. If they do better, they would want to leapfrog the EFF itself, right? But let's assume they sort of stay with the EFF. That alone would send it would mean that the ANC would have to shed votes considerably, isn't it, already, and potentially even the EFF itself, and therefore the implications thereof in terms of what happens next, in terms of who governs the country, would be what?
It's a great point. So just very quickly about the EFF, because you spoke about them earlier. The EFF's big growth in 2019 was that they made a coastal breakthrough, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, that is important, Ashraf, because remember, if we understand the genesis of the EFF, it is in places like Limpopo, the Northwest, and obviously Gauteng. So my more broader point there is, it takes time to build a national footprint. So when I saw that poll today, and I don't just dismiss polls, one's got to scrutinize them. I did some numbers, and it would mean that they would have to shoot, if they had to get 12, 13% of the vote, it would mean they're getting above 35% in KwaZulu-Natal, which would be astonishing. I mean, I have not seen a new party be able to do that in a new province, in a province. So that would be a real game changer. With regards to the EFF, this, by the way, also threatens the EFF, MK. MK can take away votes from the EFF, IFP, ANC, and some of those smaller KwaZulu-Natal parties. So this is putting everyone on edge. So with regards to the ANC, if that poll, which was released today, is even close to being correct.
But perhaps just hold it, Wayne, just 1 second. Just maybe rattle off that poll so that those that don't know understand it. What does it say?
Sure, it's a good point, Ashraf. Okay, so it had the ANC at under 40%. And let me tell you, Ashraf, I do a lot of presentations. To get the ANC below 50% is a stretch, because they've only fallen 4% in each election over the last few years. They will fall more this time. But for them to fall below 40% would be absolutely catastrophic. But I think it's unlikely right now. I just want to get that poll up quickly. The broadline figures were this, Ashraf. Basically, the ANC below 40%. The DA would remain the official opposition. They would climb slightly, which is interesting, to about 25%. And the EFF would climb a bit to about 11, 12%, but MK would beat them.
Yeah.
And again, when I look at those numbers, as per my point of the EFF, how did they grow? They had a national footprint. It's very hard right now to see MK making a splash in all 9 provinces in this election. I'm not saying they won't do well in KwaZulu-Natal and some other provinces, but wow, it would be astonishing if this poll were to be proved correct and that they would come close to eclipsing the EFF.
So up to now, I mean, we've been talking about coalitions and you know, just ignore the smaller parties. They may be offended for the moment, but let's just ignore them for now. That the question has always been, you know, is it going to be ANC-DA in coalition or ANC-EFF in the coalition? And suddenly you've got the MK party coming on board. Where do you see, and who do you see them aligning themselves with, keeping in mind that they would shed votes from the ANC and the EFF, so effectively not friends anymore?
So President Ramaphosa's ANC, and remember, it would be a different ANC under under Deputy President Mashatile. I think President Ramaphosa's ANC, out of those three options you mentioned, would want to avoid working with MK, because that would be seen as rewarding bad behavior, i.e. these are people who are our comrades, our brothers in arms. In December, they formed this new party. It would be disastrous, because if the ANC invited them back in, then you're creating a scenario for other people to do this in future elections, breakaway, because the ANC will welcome you home.
Yeah.
So I think the ANC will look at the EFF and the DA. But by the way, Ashraf, it's not just a hard decision for the ANC. That decision for the DA and the EFF is equally a hard decision, because some of their supporters would be unhappy if they went into a coalition. So we are in for very uncertain times. Let's hope there are more good polls. Let's hope there's more by-election data, so we can have a better informed picture between now and election day.
And just the last thing, we're on to news time. You said the ANC falls below 40%. It's a catastrophe. Would that be a catastrophe for the country or the catastrophe for the ANC?
Yeah, so there would be a catastrophe for the ANC. Let's see what happens in the elections. I've given you a very political answer there, Ashraf, to end off an underwhelming answer, but let's keep it with an underwhelming answer for now.
Understandable. That should go to VAR, by the way. Thank you so much for your time, Wayne Sussman. They were fascinating indeed, the way things are playing out. Let's get the news now with Madupi. It's 5 o'clock.
Ashraf, the top stories this hour. Parliament wraps up its probe against the former Speaker, and parties in Limpopo sign the IEC Code of Conduct. Very good afternoon. Parliament's Powers and Privileges Committee has wrapped up its investigation against the former National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. This relates to the salary increase of the Secretary to Parliament, Xolile George, last year. The complaint was lodged by the DA. The Legal Services Unit advised the committee that it has no jurisdiction on the matter since Mapisa-Nqakula has resigned. Acting Committee Chairperson Manketsi Tlhape says based on the legal opinion, they've resolved to put the matter to rest.
It has been indicated that the affected member here has resigned both as the Speaker and the Member of Parliament. And hence we are agreeing to rest this matter here. We don't have jurisdiction over it anymore. And I think, honorable members, that's how this committee will conclude on this matter.
Looking at election news now, political parties that will be contesting the May 29th elections in Limpopo have all supported the IEC's Code of Conduct by signing a pledge to promote a free and fair electoral process. The Commission says the pledge is important as it reminds political parties to desist from acts of intolerance, violence, and interfering in electoral processes, amongst others. IEC Chairperson Mosotho Mepa says unethical behavior from political parties and candidates will be subjected to penalties and criminal sanctions.
It is a solemn pact, a commitment to uphold the sanctity of our democratic institutions and the will of the people they represent. However, we have learned that election after election, and sometimes, sadly, there are instances witnessed of this code being flouted. We have experienced the manipulation of public sentiment and the erosion of trust in our electoral activities. This simply cannot be tolerated.
Beneficiaries of the Student Financial Aid Scheme NSFAS will soon embark on a national shutdown, halting operations at universities across the country over the delayed payments of allowances. The frustrated students say NSFAS has not paid out allowances for the month of April, resulting in them not being able to buy food and pay their rent. They lay the blame on the controversial companies that have been appointed as middlemen to administer NSFAS funds on behalf of government. Student activist Kiamo Masike.
So currently we're planning a national shutdown
We are still going to declare a date where we are going to camp at the Pretoria Department of Higher Education in the Minister's office. We're not going to live there up until our issues are resolved. We're not going to live there. This is not going to be a normal protest where we submit a memorandum of demands and then we await feedback. The only time we're going to return back to our respective universities, campuses and all of that is when there is a total termination of this contract.
The Western Cape Education Department says there are 2 days left for parents to register their children online for grade 1 and 8 for the 2025 academic year. Provincial Education MEC David Mania says admissions for these 2 grades close on Friday at midnight. He says the department has already received more than 80,000 applications for grade 1 and 8 learners.
We appeal to parents who have not yet applied to do so by Friday so that their applications will be on time. Receiving all the applications on time will make a big difference to our planning and preparation for 2025. Don't wait. Apply today.
And President Cyril Ramaphosa, alongside his Botswana counterpart, President Mokgweetsi Masisi, will tomorrow visit the bus accident site that claimed 45 Botswana nationals. The horrific crash occurred during the Easter holidays at the Mamatakala Bridge along the R518. The pilgrims were on their way to the Easter service at the St. Angena's ZCC Church. There was only one survivor, an 8-year-old girl who has since returned to Botswana. Kaelihle Khumalo has more.
According to the health officials in Limpopo, they are still identifying the burnt remains of those who died in the accident. About 8 bodies have been identified after a painstaking process. President Cyril Ramaphosa and his Botswana counterpart, President Mokgweetsi Masisi, will kick off the day in Mokopane on Thursday, where they will get a briefing before heading to the accident site. President Ramaphosa has also conveyed his condolences to the government of Botswana following the tragic accident. Kaelihle Khumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Recapping the top story, Parliament's Powers and Privileges Committee has wrapped up its investigation against former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemeli.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Bloemfontein picked as a host city for the 2027 Cricket World Cup. Golfers gearing up for the Masters, and Simbini hails World Athletics for prize money at Olympics. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, if you're leaving Joburg up towards Midrand, brace for a heavy one today. A stationary truck just after Allendale Road. A couple of lanes are closed, and there's a really big delay that starts right back around the Melrose area. So Caller Drive, Glenhove Road on the Mike 1. That's where you'll pick it up all the way through, basically, to about New Road before you're out of that. Heavy traffic en route towards the airport. In fact, if you're coming out of Pretoria, there's a big delay today on the N1 anyway, between Atchbury Road and the R21. Looks like something's happened in the roadworks. Yeah, that's a very heavy queue. And then if you split down towards the airport, once you get out of that, there's queues at Clayville. That's into the roadworks. And then a massive crash just after the Bupsfontein exit on the R21. And that's a queue now that extends pretty much all the way back to the roadwork delay in the Clayville area. So make sure you've got plenty of time to get through it. If you're leaving the airport en route to Pretoria, there's an incident around the Benoni exit causing a delay right back as far as Atlas Road. Coming out of Pietermaritzburg, there's a crash in at Ashburton. So there's a queue right from the sort of bottom of the Pietermaritzburg bypass. Earlier crash on the N3 outbound at Paradise Valley, still causing a delay for motorists leaving Durban from Spaghetti Junction out towards the M13 Pinetown split. Cape Town, a crash, M5 going north at Barclay Road in Maitland, so that's causing a delay coming through from the Rondebosch area. And a lot of traffic on Jan Smuts today, coming away from Epping Old Mutual. It's heavy in towards Athlone, and then no traffic lights further down Jan Smuts at Govan and Becky in the Hanover Park area, so additional delays over that junction as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
I tell you what, your pulse would be racing and maybe boiling over if like many other people, you find that your car's been stolen. And I often hear that, like car's been stolen, and like you hear people say, well, you know what, it's been taken across the border. So we're going to talk about that because I understand that that prevalence of cars stolen in South Africa being taken across the borders to other countries, in this case particularly to Mozambique, is on the rise. And the question is, how then do we deal with that, right? That's the first thing. Many people commenting about Chris Hani but that last score we had, I think, was really telling that, that Chris Hani and this Chris Hani, are they the same person in terms of their level of influence? So my question is, where would he be now positioned if he were alive today politically in the South African political landscape, right? So that's the first thing. You may want to also comment about the issue about the MK and my conversation with Wayne Sussman. 13% the poll says, compared to higher than the EFF. Wow. That is something. Okay? And the ANC, according to the latest poll, dropping below 40%, which, according to Wayne Sussman, catastrophe for the ruling party. Comment on that, you can tell me. What else? I did speak earlier about what you think would be, what in your opinion is South Africa's national purpose. Or, if you're struggling like me to find out what is our national purpose, then help me with the next one, which is, what should our national purpose be? So what is our national purpose? I don't know. I'm struggling, I'm telling you. So what should it be? You can tell me. Now, this is how you engage with me. You can connect via WhatsApp, and that's text or voice notes. 0614 104 107. 0614 104 107. You can call in 086 000 2032. You can also comment on our various social media platforms. SFM Radio on Facebook. You'll find us. You'll also find us on Instagram. But you can also find us on, X or the X.com platform, so you can tweet out your comments there too. But you can find me there as well, so you can just tag me, Ashraf Garda. Do use the hashtag #TheNationalPulse when you do that. By the way, we're going to talk about mobile phones. We spoke about the other day about operators, which has got the best, the fastest downloads, and MTN won that prize. We're going to talk about new phones on the market and who are the big challenger brands that are taking on the big guys, so to speak, and that comes up pretty shortly. Looking forward to that conversation. But let's stay with the issue of the cross-border crime and these car thefts and what that really means. Of course, it's a problem. So the South African Police Minister Becky Cele said that South Africa and Mozambique must work together to combat the crime. I think that's pretty obvious. Are there plans in place? Let's find out with the spokesperson for the SAPS. That's Atlanta Mate. I appreciate your time and thanks for joining us here on the National Pulse.
A very good afternoon to you and to your listeners.
Thank you. So give us some perspective in terms of the background. If we're talking about cross-border crimes has created a huge problem, how big a problem is it?
So last year, we officially formalized our working relations with Mozambique police on our side of the SAPS because we were quite concerned on the intelligence that we were receiving from our officers that a lot of vehicles that are being hijacked and stolen in South Africa are being taken over to Mozambique and are being utilized and sold in that particular country. So last year we signed an MOU with Mozambique police to say let's work together to conduct joint investigations. Let's work together to recover stolen and hijacked vehicles that are in Mozambique back to the country. So we had a meeting, a 2-day meeting with them led by the two ministers, Minister of Interior in Mozambique, as well as the Minister of Police, General Becky Cele, as well as the two national commissioners of the police services in both countries to check progress on how far are we in terms of ensuring that we put a stop to the vehicles that cross over to that particular country, but most importantly, we recover the stolen and hijacked vehicles that are in that particular country.
Okay, so in terms of and in terms of my initial question, just how big a problem is it? I mean, give us some numbers if you have in terms of the prevalence of these cross-border crimes going to Mozambique specifically.
So we are not looking only at vehicle theft. I mean, if we're looking at vehicle theft, the information at hand is that we have more than 300 vehicles that are South African vehicles that are in Mozambique, but that is our intelligence. But when we compare the numbers with Mozambique, it goes down a bit. But we are adamant that those vehicles must be brought back, and we are taking into cognizance that there are court processes in place. I mean, if you look at a year, I mean, we've only managed to recover only 23 vehicles. And when we were in Mozambique over these 2 days, they said they only have 3 vehicles that can be taken back to SA. So we are not only looking at vehicle theft. We're looking at the illegal crossings that are happening along the borders. We are looking at the kidnappings, which we strongly believe there are a number of kingpins in the country that are from Mozambique that are involved in kidnappings, especially where ransom demands.
So that's the kidnapping for high ransom, maybe targeting business people. If I get the trend right, I think mainly targeting Asian business people, if I'm not mistaken, yeah?
Absolutely. So, but what is encouraging is that last year we managed to arrest one of the kingpins from Mozambique that we do believe was highly involved and was the lead in terms of the kidnappings that were happening in both countries, and that had links to both countries, because we would find that some Mozambicans would come into the country and they'd be kidnapped here, and their families would then receive or they would get ransom demands from these particular syndicates. But we have made breakthroughs where we have arrested one of the kingpins and several others that have been involved in kidnappings, especially where ransom demands are being made. So some of it is also stock theft, where farmers along these borders, KZN and Mpumalanga, are crying, and complaining that their animals and are being stolen and taken over to the Mozambique border. And that is why in this particular meeting, we also included the Provincial Commissioner of KwaZulu-Natal. We also included the Provincial Commissioner of Mpumalanga to be present. You will recall that last year, there was an incident in the northern KZN where about 6 to 8 vehicles, including a tourist bus, was burned down by the community of Emanguzi that was complaining that there was a lot of criminal activity that involved Mozambican nationals. But we can confirm that we have a task team that is based in Emanguzi, and since then we've had minimal to zero incidents of vehicle hijack that have been hijacked and stolen and crossed over to that particular border. As it stands, we've got 64 vehicles that have been recovered. We've got 140 criminals that are in jail that we have arrested in connection with criminality, cross-border criminality.
Yeah. I mean, you know that, often it's something I've certainly tweeted about in the past to say, not just crime, but cross-border crime, but, just crime in South Africa, prevails by the massive numbers that it does, because, statistically there's a sense that these criminals believe that statistics are on their side, meaning conviction rates are low, being apprehended are low, to actually get convicted are low. So it's worth the risk. I mean, how do we turn that around? Because that seems to be, we're not even discussing violent crime, but just crime in general. I mean, that continues unabated, and it's horrific.
Look, Ashraf, the picture is turning. We are seeing significant improvement in terms of criminals that are being arrested for serious and violent crime in the country. The minister on the weekend reported that since the 8th of May last year, we launched Operation Chanela, which is a high-density operation throughout the country. And we have reported that more than 551,000 criminals have been arrested through this particular operation, where we see regular roadblocks, we see increased stop and searches, vehicle checkpoints, coordinate searches, and warrants of arrest being issued, where crime intelligence is really working, it's on the ground tracing these suspects. So we've also reported more than 5,300 illegal and unlicensed firearms that have been recovered and seized during this period. So we are not where we want to be, but surely there is progress, and we do believe working together with communities, we can do more to end the scourge of crime in the country.
Last question. What's holding you back to get to where you want to be?
Well, there's a number of things. I think on our side, it's the issue of the capacity. We've been very vocal to say we need more boots on the ground, and that is why you've seen, the president availing resources and finances available to ensure that every year we train about 10,000 police officers. In the past 2 to 3 years, we've trained and deployed 20,000 new police officers on the ground. But what is of importance is to ensure that we get community participation in the fight against crime, because when we talk about intelligence is information. Where do we get information? We get information from community members who live amongst these criminals. They are able to share that information with us, and we are able to execute, our operations and to ensure that we put them behind bars.
Okay, that's where we can leave it. Well, let's hope you are further empowered to ensure that we remain empowered and not disempowered, because criminals do just that. They strip us of our own power, and that's just not good enough. Thank you for your time, most appreciated. That is the spokesperson for the SAPS, Brigadier Atlenda Mate, spokesperson there for the SAPS. What do you make of that? Add your comments too as well around any evidence in not just cross-border but any crime in the country, any zone in the country where you have a sense that crime is sort of getting down compared to before. By the way, there's a WhatsApp from, let me just pick it up. There's a WhatsApp that's related to us from Lorenzo Dunn, saying any vehicles stolen, brought back to South Africa. I think it was mentioned earlier, the numbers are small. Actually, it's not that significant. There's a before we get to talking about in the innovation hub feature about mobile phones, let's get another voice note related to some of the big issues we've covered so far.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi Ashraf, lovely show again. I wanted to find out if the National Parliament has decided to put to bed the investigation of the former Speaker. What happens now to that salary raise, which is claimed to have been illegal by 70%? Does it remain or does it continue to stand?
Well, let's see. My understanding is that, the fact that she's resigned doesn't mean that the conviction in terms of her making a court appearance is going to fall away. Absolutely not. But your other point about, salaries and payments, well, there's been a huge issue around that, even from other members of parliament in terms of pensions, etc. I don't know. Let's see. In fact, maybe we should make a note and follow that up in terms of what are the implications for people who are, resigned, but others who are convicted as well about the crimes when they were former members of parliament and the implications thereof. So made a note of that. Certainly from a corporate governance point of view around parliament, we'll find it out. And thank you for that, for the vote of support. Much appreciated indeed. Keep them coming. I'll check if there's another voice note or two. Maybe there's another one we can pick up now. All of you having your fingers on the national pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Mike in Durban. Ashraf, many of these parties, EFF, MK, PA, a whole lot of them, we hope, they grow stronger. They form meaningful coalitions, get the numbers, make sure that the ANC is definitely unseated. So essentially we'll have 3 blocks. We have the ANC, which is old and dying. We have the DA and its coalition. We also have the left-wing parties, the EFF, MK. So we have, split into 3. That will make our democracy very much strong. All of them must get 30-something%, 30-something%, 30-something%. And, that will breed a healthy democracy. Thank you.
Percent. Okay, got that. Hussein saying actually a sad day for ordinary South Africans that Zuma will be allowed to stand, a man who was the enabler of state capture and who lost us billions. So that's another one, right? Let's get, however, to other issues now as part of the Innovation Hub, because we really want to, it is one thing we want to do on the show besides politics and current affairs, is build up the need for innovation around artificial intelligence, around marketing, around branding, but certainly around technology as well. So tech and gadgets, because we think there's a big market for that, and we need to talk to you about that because that affects what you do absolutely every single day, no matter what. Right, Brandon Peterson is with us. He's the tech editor of Reframed. Brandon, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. Now, I understand there was a survey put together by My Broadband. We had one the other day. We spoke to them about the fastest uploads and downloads. There's another conversation around MTN beating Vodacom, for example, with the best downloads. But you have some thoughts around fast rising devices, right? Outside the more obvious ones like Apple and Samsung.
Yeah, so this is actually quite interesting because obviously we're looking at stats based on the My Broadband speed test smartphone sort of survey or results. And what they're saying is that they're seeing a big rise in Android devices, but specifically Xiaomi, Honor, and Oppo. What they're saying are growing the smartphone market share, amongst very sort of tech-savvy South Africans, over the past few years.
Mm-hmm. And when you say big rise, I mean, have they evaluated what does that rise mean in comparison to the other market leaders?
Yeah, so what they've done with this is they've just sort of isolated these specific brands, saying, this is what their market share was in 2020 versus 2024. What's interesting about this, though, is if you look at the sort of broader data, obviously theirs is a significantly smaller sampling than, say, something from Counterpoint Research. But Counterpoint Research, which is one of the big sort of market research companies worldwide, is saying that in South Africa, it's, Chinese brands as a whole, which are actually increasing their market share. So according to them, South Africa's smartphone sort of sales have increased by 29% year on year in 2023. And leading that sort of growth is actually Honor. And Honor is sitting with like 91% growth compared to the previous year.
But okay, that's so 29% increase of smartphones. Their smartphones or smartphones across all the brands?
So if you look at what my Broadband is saying, my Broadband is just looking at these specific brands: Xiaomi, Oppo, Honor, Vivo. Where you look at Counterpoint is looking at all the Chinese smartphone brands in the country, but they've also broken it down. So you can see that Honor, for example, is clearly the biggest grower since they've sort of re-entered the country a couple of years ago. Since then, they've seen over 1,000% increase, but in terms of year-on-year increase, they've seen 91% year increase, whereas the others have seen significantly smaller increases, but still in most cases, they've been able to see an uptick.
And in terms of that growth, particularly of Chinese brands, I mean, can you put a finger to that in terms of why that is the case? What has happened that has caused this market penetration?
I think we're seeing the confluence of a few different things. So one is, I mean, as much as we're seeing this growth from these Chinese brands, Samsung still remains the firm favorite. But I think in South Africa and globally, what you're seeing is there's a little bit of a feeling of stagnation with Samsung. And what the Chinese brands are doing is they're able to innovate faster and bring these devices to you at a lower cost. But then also they're doing these amazing bundle deals. So, you'll buy a phone, you'll get a watch, you'll get a tablet. They're giving you better sort of options in terms of how long you can sort of repay the device. Also that sort of thing, which we're not seeing from the incumbents like Samsung and Apple.
And in terms of the market share, do you have those numbers with you in terms of, you said Samsung dominates the market. What's the percentage breakdown of, say, the top three?
I mean, in terms of the top three, let me actually just pull it up.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know. By the way, I'm in the market to buy tablets. So I'm just telling everybody else listening, you can contact me. They may just give me one of those call centers like, we've heard you, we're going to call you now. Yeah.
Let's see. Well, I'm actually trying to pull it up here. Let's see. So we're looking at, I mean, if you look at some of the other Chinese OEMs, you're looking at Xiaomi, Techno, and then we're just going to sort of call them the others. Their shipments have increased by 86%, 80%, and 93% respectively. But when we say 93%, that's, others including Oppo, Vivo, a whole lot of others. In terms of what Samsung is looking at right now, unfortunately, I know they dropped by 6%. I don't know exactly what their number is, but I mean, it's significant enough that, they can feel the push from the
Okay,
carriers.
so I've got here, just correct me if I'm wrong, it's got that Samsung sits at 65% of device share. Would that be what we're talking about, that 65% of the market, or is that wrong?
I mean, if you look at device share, remember, when you're talking about Samsung, you've got to remember also they've got, their flagship, their foldables, their sort of more affordable A series. So their device share would be in terms of the smartphone market, but it's across the board. So affordable, expensive, foldables, everything is just lumped under that 65%.
And the other thing linked to this is the issue of affordability. I mean, we're in a pretty depressed economy. I mean, some of us have gone through 3-4 years without actually changing our phones, either buying it, people buying it cash or doing it on contract. But either way, it's still going to cost you lots of money, right? In so far as the growth that you talk about, I mean, does that surprise you that somehow people are finding the money to be able to fund their purchases of smartphones?
It does. I sat there looking at the data and I was like, where are people getting the money? But at the same time, if you look at the data, it's not saying specifically, it's the flagships that people are buying. So again, you've got to take it with that sort of grain of salt. If you look at offerings from, the Samsungs, the Xiaomis, the Honors, even the Oppos, what they're doing is they're trying to aggressively push the sort of more affordable devices. And I think that's where more of the sort of sales and market share is coming from.
Okay, the lower end of the market, yeah. But I mean, if I then rewind, and this is the last thing in 30 seconds, to BlackBerry a long, long time ago, it's like, what is the unique pull of BlackBerry? It was BBM as a feature, right? In your opinion, I mean, when you compare all different smartphones, what's the great pull that leads a consumer or a buyer to buy one phone over the other?
It's reliability and it's longevity, because as you said, people can't afford it, so they're keeping devices for longer. If I'm buying a phone from a manufacturer that's going to give me a longer software and support, that's what most people are going to go for.
I'll tell you what, I would sort of buy one if that phone is theft-proof. Just making the point, okay? Brandon Peterson, thank you for your time. Most appreciated. Tech editor at Refrain. And by the way, if you feel like tweeting out some of the information, Brandon, you can do so. You can just tag me, Ashraf Garda, and SFM Radio on the X platform, of course, using the hashtag #TheNationalPulse. We certainly get a feel of it here. It's 5:30. Let's get the news headlines with Madupi Mahalamele.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda. The tops in the headlines this hour. Durban residents have welcomed the decision by the Electoral Court in favor of former President Jacob Zuma in his bid to remain on the MK party list ahead of the elections. Parliament's Powers and Privileges Committee has wrapped up its investigation against former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, and the majority of senators in Liberia's Senate have passed a second vote backing the establishment of a war crimes court in the country. And those are your headlines. A full news update at 6.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a super heavy backlog out of Pretoria towards the airport this afternoon. You've got a very unusual backlog on the N1 South today from Linwood Road all the way down to the roadworks at the R21. It looks like there might be an additional lane closure in there. That's very heavy. And then as you split off and pick up the R21 towards the airport, you queue into the roadworks approaching Clayville. And then there's been a crash in the second set of roadworks today between the Bopsfontein and Benoni exit. So that remains your sort of third queue of traffic out of Pretoria en route to the airport. Make sure you've got a ton of time to get through that. Going northbound, police are dealing with a crime scene incident just up by the Benoni exit on the R21 North, and that's heavy. If you're leaving the airport, you'll pick up that queue right back around sort of Atlas Road territory. The Mike 1 N1 stays really heavy from Melrose right the way through to New Road, and the N1 South, Randburg, down to the 14th Avenue off-ramp without traffic lights in that area. That's heavy. Leaving Pietermaritzburg, a crash at Ashburton. If you're Durban bound, that's a big backlog. The M7, heavy again tonight up the hill towards the Queensborough, off-ramp towards the Belleville Road exit. And Cape Town, a lot of pressure in the Newlands area today. Routes like Campground Road near the stadium, Palmyra Road, the main road, even Newlands Avenue heading out towards the M3 is very heavy. Just up the road, main road at Rondebosch is slow. And Jan Smuts Drive, a lot of traffic there. Epping down to Athlone's Klipfontein Road's really badly backed up. And then no lights on Jan Smuts Drive at Govan and Becky, a big junction in the heart of the Cape Flats, Hanover Park area. So heavy traffic around that one as well. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Stay safe on the roads. SAFM is with you. This is SAFM Sports with Doming Khapele.
So last time round we spoke about Olympics and money. What's changed in the world of sport now?
Well, we're talking all things cricket this time around, where Bloemfontein has been selected as one of the host cities for the 2027 Men's Cricket World Cup that will be played in South Africa. The Mangaung Oval will be one of 8 grounds where the flagship event of 50-over cricket will be played, while Buffalo Park in East London also cracked the nod. While the ICC is yet to confirm the dates and fixtures, the World Cup is set to be played in September of 2027. Namibia and Zimbabwe will also be hosting some games during the tournament. Then in golf, Rory McIlroy will make his 10th attempt at completing a career Grand Slam this week at the Masters. McIlroy spent time with Harmon, best known as Tiger Woods' coach in his heyday, as part of his preparation for the Augusta. McIlroy has made some tough moments at Augusta, especially in 2011 when the then 21-year-old led at the turn of the final round but suffered a dramatic collapse on the back 9, leaving him 15th of turn 8 over par 80. And this time around, he promises to take a more patient approach on a course where an aggressive strategy has cost him dearly. In football, security measures have been increased at Champions League quarterfinal matches in Paris and Madrid today after the Islamic State group made threats against stadiums. Now, security was strengthened for Arsenal's match with Bayern Munich at the Emirates Stadium in London yesterday, and there were no reports or reported incidents in the Spanish capital, where Real Madrid drew 3-3 with Manchester City. Today, Paris Saint-Germain will hope to put one foot in the semi-finals when Barcelona visit for tonight's mouth-watering quarter-final first leg meeting at Parc des Princes, while Borussia Dortmund are away at Atletico Madrid with kick-off at 9 p.m. Then Andrei Rublev's Monte Carlo Masters title defense ended today with the straight sets defeat by Alexei Popyrin. Now, Popyrin eased to a 6-4 and 6-4 win. The world number 46 will next face Alex de Minaur tomorrow for a possible quarterfinal against Novak Djokovic. And finally, South African sprint sensation Akani Simbini has hailed World Athletics for awarding prize money at the Olympic Games. The global governing body said a total prize pot of 44.4 million rand has been made available for this year's Olympics in Paris, with gold medalists receiving around 925,000 rands, and this will be extended to silver and bronze medalists at Los Angeles 2028. And Simbini says that this gives added motivation to win a gold medal. On that note, it is a wrap from my side for SAFM Sport.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Going on in the US, because I see that they're quite under pressure.
Inflation. US inflation numbers came out.
Okay. I think that didn't work out. But let me just say, as we sort things out, by the way, just talking about sport, did you watch the Manchester City Real Madrid game last night? 3-3, first leg, quarterfinal. Wow. Watch the highlights. So much to learn from that. And the Arsenal game against, Bayern Munich. And watch this penalty that was not awarded. And you can tell me what you think about that. Sport has got so much to talk about. There's debate all the time, right? By the way, there's probably only one thing more interesting than sport and politics and current affairs is understanding the markets and the businesses that are ticking all the time, because you can learn so much from them, right? So, the big show comes up after 6. But to set the scene for that, let's get a market update with a MoneyWeb market update with Jimmy Moyaha. Hi, Jimmy.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Good afternoon, Dumi, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Yeah, go ahead. You got lots to tell us.
Yes, quite a few things coming up on the show today. We are taking a look at the latest water treatment plant. It's the first of its kind of water treatment plant that cost about just over 100 million rand to create, but we're expecting it'll do a lot more and add a lot more value into the markets and the ecosystem. We know we've been having water problems in South Africa in some areas, so we're going to look into that with the founders and the organization that manages that and just unpack what that means. We've also got a conversation around the developments from Afrimat. Afrimat had embarked on that billion rand acquisition of Lafarge. That's finally gone through all the regulatory hurdles there, so we're going to touch base with the Afrimat stable and just unpack what's happening there and what the next steps are from that perspective. And then every Wednesday we do have a couple of features. We've got our executive lounge feature where we speak to an executive in the industry or in various industries, and we've got a gentleman by the name of Jacques Berger today on that segment. But we've also got our consumer awareness segment treatment. And today I'm speaking to the National Consumer Commission around the latest pig farming scheme or scam that is plaguing South Africans. We're going to dig into what the scheme looks like, how people can avoid being victims of the scheme, and how we can just better prepare and better educate ourselves as consumers of these sorts of financial products. But before we get to that, the markets have had an interesting reaction to US inflationary numbers, and Henko Creer has been keeping an eye on the markets throughout the day. He joins me now to give us a quick summary of what's been happening there. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. It seems as though we're back to dollar strength.
Yes, Jimmy, you're absolutely right. Hello to you and to Ashraf and to me. Good evening to all the listeners. And because of those US inflation numbers that you've just mentioned, we see that the US markets are unhappy and they're under pressure, with the Dow Jones currently trading 1.3% weaker, and then the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq each 1% down at the moment. Let's see where it ends at the end of their trading day. European stocks, they finished quite mixed, with the FTSE 100 and the DAX about 0.2% stronger today. But the CAC 40 in France lost 0.2%. And then the JSE was under pressure for most of the day and traded in the red. But then in the 11th hour, right at the end, it decided to finish, I would say, unchanged, because barely in the green and finished about 0.05% stronger. That's why I say that's more or less unchanged. And that was at a level of 75,520 points. Then the industrial index, it gained 1.1% today, but the resources index lost 0.4% and the financial index 1.4% weaker. Some companies that had a great day today, Naspers and Prosus, they each finished 3% stronger, followed by BHP and First Rand. They each gained 1% today, but Standard Bank didn't have such a nice day. Standard Bank lost 3.4%, almost 3.5% today. Other companies also finishing in the red. Nedbank, 5.2% down. Growthpoint, Resilient and Implats, they each lost 4.5%. And then Sun International as well as Capitec finished the day 3.5% weaker. There's also Sasol, which lost 2% today. Then back to some good news. Exxaro had a wonderful day, 6% stronger. 91 and Alphaman, they each gained 5.5%, followed by Barloworld, ARM and Tungela, which each finished the day 4.5% stronger. Then the commodities market, the price of gold, currently $2,338 an ounce, silver on the dot $28, platinum $968, and palladium is trading at $1,050 an ounce. Then the price of Brent crude is $89 a barrel. And the rand weakening a little bit today, now sitting at 18 Rand 75, then to the US dollar, then 23 Rand 55 to the pound, 20 Rand and 16 cents to the euro, and 12 Rand 25 to the Australian dollar. And the Bitcoin still sky high, still maintaining its level of $68,500, and that is more or less 1.32 million Rand. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed.
Thank you for that update, Henku. We're going to be digging into a lot of the U.S. developments. We know we're kicking off earnings season in the U.S. as well, with the major banks kicking us off as usual. So we're going to dig into some of those movements just after 6 p.m. But for now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Thanks, Fred.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.2 FM in Thohoyandou. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
And wherever you are, I mean, I heard that about Thohoyandou. Where are you listening to us from now? I'd love to know. And if you wish to take a picture of where you are, that's even greater. But if you don't want to, then just text to say, I'm so-and-so, and this is where I am, and this is where I'm listening from. And if you like what you're listening to, give us a thumbs up as well. That would be just great. And you can connect with me via multiple platforms. Firstly, I mean, you can also tweet it out onto the X platform. Just tag SAFM Radio and tag myself using the hashtag The National Pulse. But you can WhatsApp 061 414 107. 061 4104 107. That's text or voice notes in terms of where you are now. Now, by the way, there's a good chance for you to just raise some of the big issues because we've had many people commenting about many things yesterday as well as yesterday. And I know yesterday, because we had that live broadcast at Freedom Park, looking at Freedom at 30, we couldn't take many of the calls from all of you. So here's a chance. What is it that you want to get off your chest? What is it that gets your pulse racing? And, let me know. But also, while you're at it, tell me the type of content that you like to listen to here on this particular platform. Now, you'll know as part of the National Pulse, we cover current affairs. We look at issues around the elections as part of the Election Watch feature. We also bring in the Global Watch because we need to cover global stories, and we do that. Is there anything missing? One thing we are doing is a very specific accent on innovation, and therefore the conversation we had around tech issues and innovation and marketing, and we'll play up on that because that's, many may know I've hosted a marketing show on this platform 5 years ago, so we need to pick up on those things as well. So innovation, because artificial intelligence I think is so critically important for IR, around branding, around marketing issues. If we can cover that in short sound bites, we will certainly do that in short features, okay? But you tell me, what is it you'd like to hear more of on this platform? I certainly would love to know. Beyond that, today we spoke about Chris Hani. We spoke about e-tolls being amper finish and klar. We got a day to go because it was all done in Joburg, right? We also spoke about the water crisis in Hammanskraal and the residents, they can't drink that water. It's not drinkable. Huge issue there. We spoke about the impact of Ramadan on greater South African society outside of its narrow, Muslim community. We say that on the last day of Ramadan in South Africa, Muslims celebrating Eid tomorrow. So in advance, I'll tell you Eid Mubarak to you. So all those things and more. Maybe I'm missing out on something. Banyana not qualifying for the Olympic Games. Ouch, what a pity, really, isn't it? So you can tell me whatever it is you want to get off your chest. You let me know. I've asked you for WhatsApps about where you are, and I'd love to know. So, hi, Ashraf, it's Vincent Risi Marti in Tsakani, Brakpan. Nice job you are doing. Keep it up, and I will listen to you religiously. Okay, that's like a religious instruction, but listen anyway, okay? So, thank you for that. There's another one, Andrew Twedwa saying, listening from Cape Town. There's a nice picture as well from you, Andrew. Great that you've sent that in. And there's some more. I'll pick up on those just now. Right, let's get to some of the callers now. Mike in Newlands. Hi, Mike.
Long time no speak.
Very long. I certainly remember you. Absolutely. But go ahead.
Thank you. I wanted to pick up on a caller that you had earlier talking about Chris Hani.
Yeah.
I always believe that the one next to Nelson Mandela, Chris Hani was the biggest tragedy. His death was the biggest tragedy our country ever had to face and overcome. And I always say that because he was a man of incredibly high principles, of high standards. And I've got his quotes right in front of me here because I love it so much. And it argues, as your caller said, where would Chris Hani be today? I think he said he'd be about 84 years old. What would he think of South Africa that we're in today? And if you take his quote that he said many, many years ago, what I fear is that liberators emerge as elitists who drive around in Mercedes-Benzes, or in the case of Mvula Mokanyana, of course, in Aston Martin, and use the resources of this country to live in palaces and to gather riches. And if I look at Paula and our deputy president, who's just bought, I think, his second or third mansion, literally just around the corner from me in Constantia, for about 34 million. Our president has a huge house on Sea Point side in Higovale, worth 150 million, and then you can work your way down the list. I do not think that Chris Hani, if he was alive today, and I sure wish he was, because I think he would have made a difference, would not be a member of the ANC, certainly not. And he would be back to being a freedom fighter, fighting as hard as he was to get rid of apartheid, to get rid of the ANC.
Okay, so interesting. You're saying that in fact he would not be. He would have left the ANC. And when do you think he would have left? I mean, at what point? I know we're speculating. At what point? At which year? At which moment in the history of the ANC would he have left them?
I think the Firepool affair would have been pretty much that would be. I think he would have drawn the line. Our president lied outright. We knew he was lying. We watched the entire ANC pull together and stand behind a man they knew had told the lie. We subsequently found out, of course, that the Thai NEC was lying, and they knew they were lying to the people of South Africa. Parliament was totally abused. The oath that the people took was abused, and I think that would probably have been the time when he crossed the line in the sand and said, right, that's it, I'm out of here.
Okay, got that. Certainly got us thinking. Mike from Newlands, appreciate your call. Thank you so much for that. We've got another of the WhatsApp saying, hi Ashraf, it's Elman in Corsi in Middleburg in Mpumalanga. Well, that's great. Certainly gives us a good sense of where you are, and it reflects what we've just said, that SAFM, and in this case, this show, The National Pulse, is reflective of the national pulse at national level, but also the national pulse of the people of the country, because we are able to reach an entire nation. So you can just see, just from the calls or the WhatsApps, people from not just the big metropolitan areas, but the rural communities, wherever you are in South Africa. Basically, we've got you covered. Tokozani saying, I'm listening from KwaMashu. There you are. That's in KZN. Percy, let's get to your thoughts from Matlosana. We're going to talk about MK. Hi, Percy.
Hey, good evening, Asha. How are you, my brother?
I am very good indeed. And MK is like, well, I'll tell you what, people who follow rugby, they're worried about who's going to win the different provincial tournaments, and then watching soccer or cricket, like, holy, the election is another big race in its own right. And MK, well, certainly got us thinking. So tell me about it.
And Asha, what I like about MK, they are so strategic, those guys. And I don't forget, MK are the big bones of military intelligence of the ANC. Those guys are so strategic. They decide they don't have even manifesto, but they are pushing radical transformation. And what I like about MK, if you drive, you cannot even see the big billboard say, join MK. People, they just work from the ANC, DA, EFF to join MK. Those guys are so strategic. That is why I said after the election, we are going to be surprised.
Okay, but here's a question to you. I mean, when you say they're strategic, that means they have strategy. But the reality is all the parties have strategy. Are you saying you're impressed with their strategy, the way they've put themselves out at this point in time?
Asha, don't forget, those guys are the intelligence of the ANC military. They know what they are doing. They decided, watch and see. After the election, you see, they are not making noise or doing lots of things. They don't have the manifesto, but people are joining MK with numbers.
Okay.
Like even now, I was seeing in social media, they want to form a women's league for MK. So you see those guys, they are coming with something strong.
Okay. Are you impressed enough to vote for them?
Yeah, now I'm loyal to Zuma. I love Zuma. After he was a president, promised us 7,000 jobs. I believe in Zuma. I have to vote for you.
All right, got that. Thanks for that. Thanks for that call. And as you say, that Minnie from Ramsgate says, how can criminals lead a country? There's another thought completely different to that person who says, I love Zuma, right? Impo from Mangaung also wants to talk about MK. Go ahead, Impo.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Before I get to my point, I just want to say I like the way this guy from Newlands, his dreams are very nice. Yeah, I like his dreams. I wish I could dream like him.
There we are. Okay.
Ashraf, here's my point. People are overrating this MK thing. And I think it's nice because people are giving them so much publicity. This stadiumology thing. It's one way of a political party to try to show strength, that we've got followers and stuff like that. But when it comes to the polls, it becomes a different story altogether. Now, people are talking on media, social media, and all stuff like that. We know in the past, the times of the Guptas, they used to have people who were being dedicated, being paid, to propel certain narrative in the media. They've been paid. It's a similar thing that is actually happening. And then watch out this. People are wishing for the MK to come back because they're saying Zuma is a messiah, he did this and that and that for them. But they forget one thing. It is on record that the Zondo Commission has declared in one man was behind of state capture. Now, this is a project that is not completed. Now, they are coming back in a certain way to come and complete this project. Watch my words. When these guys take over, if they can take over, I don't think they will take over. Those Guptas, wherever they are coming back and come and start start from where they ended. Watch this.
Well, return of Zuma, return of the Guptas. That's what you're saying. Okay, so but you're also saying, just hold it. You're saying that people are overestimating the impact of MK. So
yes, they're overestimating.
Where do you think they're going to land up then? I mean, if some of the polls talk about 13%, which is even higher than the EFF, which really is massive for a baby party, right?
You know, the other thing is on these polls. These polls are actually manipulating people's. I know my standpoint. I don't even listen to these polls. I don't, because I know what I want. Ashraf, they can put whatever statistics on those polls, whatever they want to put, and they are not going to sway me because I know where I stand.
Okay.
Now they are actually playing with the minds of people who are still not knowing what to do. Now, once you know what you want to do, even if people can say whatever things they want to say, or trying to sway people's minds by projecting other people as the messiahs when they caused such a havoc. 50 billion was stolen by the Guptas with Zuma and his people. You understand? But today they want to portray him as a messiah. Come on, man.
Well, that's the reality. People love him, whether they're right.
Yes, they love him. They love him. Some of them because they benefited from the damage he has caused.
Okay.
They are still reaping the consequences of the damage that he has caused. The money that should have been used, to build the infrastructure and repair all the roads that are falling apart now.
I know one person who's not going to vote for the MK. Got that. Thanks for that info. Let's get another. Ashraf, historically, MK cannot be compared with COPE. The latter was everywhere in the country but couldn't get 10% of the vote, including the fact that there were few political parties at that time. Now, MK is solely based in KZN with tiny bits in Mpumalanga and Gauteng province. Let's see if that is the case. What happens on May 29th? Look, I'll tell you what. The one point is valid. Polls are a guideline, but you can't take them as like the gospel, if I can say that. If polls and social media were the only platform, the EFF would run away with things, certainly on social media. More of their supporters are activists on the X platform on Twitter than anybody else. Doesn't always translate into an actual vote, okay? Anonymous in Durban, also MK conversation. That's in your neck of the wood. Hi, Anonymous.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, right. What's your point?
My point is in relation to MK, but I'll just deviate a bit and come back to MK. My problem is to do with South Africa. It's political crisis and then poor political education. We tend to like individuals. We are in a country where there's a political crisis. When there's a crisis and it's not easy to point out the problem. We can't. That's why it's even opportunities like people who are in MK. Those people who are in MK are people who are in exile, who have that word. If you ask to any ANC, what is our time to eat? Those was a statement was made when Zuma was actually seen to be someone to be used as a tool for people to enrich themselves. It was not to do with Zuma. I remember I was still young, I was a student, and I was so obsessed about entertainment. I would sit with journalists, and I would hear politicians talking to because they are friends. Sometimes they get to know the story, they get to know what is going on in the politics and with their intelligence as journalists. I remember it was said that it's our time to eat. Zuma is enriching his friends. And then most of the people in South Africa are very obsessed about being someone they've seen that they've liked him as a celebrity, like Michael Jackson. They don't understand. People have to be ethical, principled, and also have competencies. It has to do with asking myself what this person is going to do for me. It's for him to dance on stage and followed by a lot of people and have a lot of wives. I'm not talking about Zuma, but it's bigger. It's really bigger. Because even with the economy in South Africa, it's enriching the people who are already rich. It's not aimed to give a social economy that will be sustainable to everyone. You see, so when people are opportunities, they see on opportunities, and they'll come with organizations, they'll come with businesses and all those things.
And that's what you see playing out. Okay, there you are, Anonymous. Yeah. Thanks for that. Well, I'll tell you what, yeah. Okay, the reality is opportunities are always there, and people join parties and movements and organizations for many reasons. They do see benefit for themselves. But here's another issue. How important is it do you see again that how important is a political head who is hugely popular and well known to head up a party. I'm thinking about, again, former President Jacob Zuma on the one hand. Let's go historically, Nelson Mandela. If you look at in the current context, the role of Julius Malema. If you look at the other parties, let's say Gayton McKenzie, for example. He's got a certain way that he connects with the audience, with the crowds. Is very much a populist, right? So compare him to, say, Songezo Zibi, for example, or John Steenhuisen from the DA, or Herman Mashaba. Meaning, in fact, how many parties have a political leader head who's a female besides the Good Party? I mean, Patricia Little comes to mind, but anybody else? Just interesting one indeed. But here's the point: does the image of the political leader, how much does that sway you in making your decision? So when you're choosing to vote, not only looking at for me, I would certainly look at, like, say, the top 30 people in that party, besides their policies, say, who are the top 30 in that party, because they matter to me, okay? But how much of the 30, for example, do you look at the number one and say, that number one person will actually determine whether I vote for that party purely because I like or I admire that person, or I dislike and I do not admire that person? So it doesn't matter what the party stands for beyond that. The rest of it makes no difference whatsoever. I will not vote for that party, or in fact, I will vote for that party. Right. By the way, I want to check one or two people still sending some WhatsApps in terms of where they are. We got about a minute or so to go. If you want to, you can send on in very quickly, particularly to tell me where you are. Can't take your calls right now. But let me it's a good chance to tell you where I am. I mean, you can follow me on Twitter, or X, the X platform. You can follow me on all other social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, even LinkedIn too. But particularly do also follow SAFM Radio. And whenever you can, use the hashtag The National Pulse, because that's really what we want to play up all the time. Connecting you to the National Pulse, getting you to have a feel of the National Pulse of where you are. Someone saying, we all know you're voting for the ANC, Ashraf. Really? Okay. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. I'm just saying, really? You know what's in my heart. You can feel my pulse. I don't know. That's certainly not the case. I haven't made up my mind at all. I'll tell you now who I'm voting for. And you'll only know that, like many other people, on the 29th of May, if we decide to share that with you. Right, to end up the parting shot as we celebrate Freedom Month, let's sign up for the words of Nelson Mandela, who said, real leaders must be ready to sacrifice all for their people. You got that? Real leaders must be ready to sacrifice all for their people. Let's end then by just saying for the people of the Muslim faith celebrating Ramadan, the entire month. I think today is the last day of Ramadan, which means tomorrow is the day of Eid. So in advance to you, on the day of Eid al-Fitr, the breaking of Ramadan, it's Eid Mubarak. Have I got that right? Eid Mubarak to you. We'll chat again sometime soon. Let's get the news now. It's 6 o'clock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garda. The top stories: more reaction to Zuma's electoral court win, and Parliament wraps up its probe against its former speaker. Very good evening. Starting with election news, some Durban residents